breaking off. Like, I'm not taking one. I need to lose it.
If it makes you feel any better, it's just me that brings in the donuts and the junk food and stuff. Everybody
Yeah.
else is trying to be healthy.
I'm like, just come work out. It's fun. You get a nice little sweat going
Not
on.
Lose some weight, you eat whatever you want. It's fantastic.
All right, so we got Abigail, we got Amon and Joseph. Shaylee's out. And anybody know anything about Sharon?
I thought she was coming on.
Yeah. Bradley was the one I was kind of curious about whether or not he was even going to be here this semester. Is he registered?
He is. The only person who didn't come back was Errol.
Yeah, he's in a different school.
Okay. I spoke to him via email and tried to figure why he was leaving or what was going on there. The biggest thing I want to do with you guys this morning, is this already being recorded?
Yeah.
Is kind of know or figure out where are you guys at in information wise. I know there was an abrupt change that happened right at the end of you guys' last semester. Okay. I was told by Charlotte on December 6th that as of January 1st she wasn't program director anymore. So unfortunately I had until December 17th when the semester ended and when the school broke for almost 3 weeks for break for Christmas to try to pick up where you guys were at and try to keep, get schedules so that we can continue the course through this semester.
Zero trauma.
Everything has pretty much gone from a pretty decent pace to a cram fest since chapter 21. So 21 through 26 was the last portion, so we're right before trauma, but everything was.
When you say crammed, how do you mean?
There was a lot of information over a very short period of time.
You guys have been doing a lot of online and virtual video classes, right? How do you feel about that?
I mean,
Honestly,
no,
this is a hands-on.
like I go in and no matter what, I'm already going to review the information.
Okay, and that's fine. Having that available to you for review
definitely helps
is a
with that.
good thing.
Yeah.
Okay, again, because I was handed this at the last minute, said run with it and do great things. I'm not very familiar with the online and the virtual. I sat back and watched my son for almost 3 months at virtual homeschooling, but man, that looks like it sucks.
Oh,
And now I'm in a position to where now I got to be that virtual teacher. I'm not a fan of it, I'll tell you that. I do think that EMS is a very tactile course. The career is a very tactile course. You know, I could sit here and explain to you BBM ventilation of a patient or how to start an IV, but putting your hands on and doing it is where you're really going to get.
that's where, that's
Okay, and those are where the labs come in. Something else I did notice in the schedule was you guys had very little lab time, okay?
Yeah, they
And that's not just this class. I've seen that for several classes in the past. You know, where 2 and 3 weeks before the end of the course, myself or any of the other adjuncts are in there doing skills lab with them, and they're like, oh, we've never done that before. We've never put our hands on that equipment. And I was like, that's a problem.
Yeah,
Okay,
especially when it's pretty
clear.
fundamental stuff. Hey, there we go. Well, good morning. Grab a donut.
And sign in for me. And you are Sharon. Okay, all right. I'm trying to
No,
remember
that's
our names
Bradley.
straight. Is that?
It's
2021, don't you? Okay. So, in that being said, looking at the schedule where you guys didn't have a whole lot of lab time, I'm trying to adjust things. And now that may take some adjustment on your guys' part too. And you telling me today that you gotta go to work at 12:45, that definitely puts a kink in my plans, okay? Because what I do want to do is, I've got a copy of the next 2 weeks schedule. I just put something on Blackboard yesterday because there was no schedule.
There's nothing on
Like I said-
Pearson either.
Oh, I know, and that's what, is it Shaylee or Shelee?
Shelley.
Shalee. Okay, Shalee.
Shelley. I mean, yeah.
Shay. Okay. She told me the same thing. She was having a problem with Pearson. Just before the Christmas break, I finally got on to where I had access to Pearson. I did all my account and password and it let me in. I was looking at all this great information and all the test banks that I could use. And yesterday I got on it and it said enter your account number and password. I did, said I got this. You're not authorized to view this. You must get permission from C. Bush. I'm like, oh gosh, okay, so this is gonna be good. So in looking at the schedule, and again, I'll tweak it some more and update it on Blackboard, because the one on Blackboard, still has some changes that need to be made. Homework assignments right now, if you can get on and do them on My Brady electronically.
There's nothing
Okay.
listed, like it's just blank for the next.
Okay, and guys, I feel your pain, I hope you feel my pain.
Yeah.
We're gonna be patient with each other through the semester, but we're gonna get through it, okay? We may have to go back to some old school teaching, meaning you pull your book out and look at those questions in the back and write on paper and pencil what it is and turn it into me, okay? We're gonna have to do that probably for a little bit until, I've been spending a lot of time with the IT guy here. We've become very intimately close. It's kind of scary sometimes. But there's so much that I don't know about the administrative side of the course, okay? I don't want you guys to suffer for that. When I have a question, I'll take it to the dean. And he finds it out for me or gets me with somebody else, but we will get through this. So, long story short, I want to push most of our lecture to Tuesdays. I want to do it in person as much as possible. That being said, Tuesdays, plan on them being long days, okay? If you can rearrange your work schedule, and I know I'm giving you 30 minutes notice, on down the road, if you can rearrange your work schedule to where Tuesdays you either don't work at all, or you will go to work later, that would probably be a good thing, because looking at, I'm going right now on a 2-month schedule. I've got the class covered throughout January and February with instructors.
So, how long is it gonna be on Thursday?
Thursdays will probably only be a half a day.
So we'll be done by like 12 or?
Most likely, because again, there's gonna be some days, like if I'm the only instructor available on that Thursday, and I'm coming off a shift Wednesday, I work 85 miles out of town.
Yeah.
I get in town by about 10 in the morning. So we may have to push class back to an afternoon session versus a morning session.
Okay, we're on Bloodworth.
Bloodworth is on with us, okay? I know one of your questions to me was, who's gonna be your instructor? Primarily, it's gonna be myself, Jimmy Bloodworth, and Melissa Gordy. Y'all have met Jimmy?
Everybody.
You met Melissa?
Yeah.
Adam Willis, I don't know if you've ever met him. He's another adjunct. I call him my princess because I have to treat him with kid gloves, and he's got a very simple schedule. He says he ain't got time for me, but I'm trying to get him a little bit more involved. Any rumors about Charlotte? Charlotte was not fired. Charlotte was not removed from the program. Charlotte is still on as an adjunct, okay? How much time she's going to give us or be in the class, I don't know, okay? The changes that took place with Charlotte, and again, I don't know what was told to you guys. I had a long talk with our medical director yesterday, last night. One, finding out if she knows what's going on with the program or if she's even gonna stay on board with us. After about a 45-minute talk with her, she was, I'm so glad we talked, because she was under the impression that Columbus Tech was dissolving the EMS program, and it was all gonna go away.
We heard they were downsizing.
Do you guys have rumors of the program going away?
Yeah.
That's not the goal, okay? What has been happening is our enrollment is small. Look at this classroom.
Yeah.
Go down the road to Trinity or Southern Union or CVCC and walk into their EMS programs, and there are 20+ students in every class, okay? That's a problem. When you guys started your course, how many people in your class?
14.
14. We're down to now 6, maybe 7. 50% of you guys lost in one semester.
We don't have to split classes though.
Yeah, great. We'll get so small, we don't have to worry about socially distancing or splitting classes. That's not my goal. I would rather have 20 of you in here, but at the same time, as if we get enrollment up like that, we have more instructors. We have a full-time program director position. The reason Charlotte stepped down was they reduced the program and the program director position from a full-time position to a part-time position.
Yeah.
She was offered that position to stay in that role as program director. She declined it, okay? So any rumors or misconceptions that she was fired or forced out or anything like that, that is not the truth, okay? The program was reduced to a part-time director position, and she chose not to stay in it.
Yeah, but she didn't, we didn't hear that.
You didn't hear that? Okay. And again, it happened very abruptly, She was offered the position. Like I said, the next day I got a text from her, oh, by the way, I'm not a director anymore. I am not your program director. I'm not the interim program director. I am the guy right now who's juggling balls, trying to keep them from falling. Okay? We do have a person in the works right now who's going through the hiring process to fill that part-time program director position. Okay? His name is Gary Metcalf. He started this program here. He was program director before Charlotte. He is a 20-plus year paramedic. He's been an RN for probably 14 or 15 years. Was a flight nurse with me where I work and several other places he's flown at. He works now at Piedmont Midtown on their PIC line team. Wealth of knowledge. Okay, he's going to fill that role as our program director. Okay, but you'll mainly see me, Jimmy, and Melissa in class. Okay, so going back to that, our goal is keep every one of you. My roster right now has 7 of you. Okay, I know we've had some issues why there's 3 missing, but
Do you know where Bradley is? Have you heard from him?
I did yesterday, and he mentioned something about a concussion, and he hasn't answered me if I asked if he was okay or not, so.
you mentioned a concussion.
Yes.
I'm believing not laid up on the side of the road somewhere.
We haven't heard anything yet.
Okay.
He just stopped responding,
I
so.
just-
And I've never heard anything
It
from
would be
him in any of them.
Yeah, I know. All right.
All right, well,
Okay.
you guys will look into him, see if he needs.
Yeah, so that's something now. Probably.
I didn't think it was gonna be a concussion. I thought it was gonna be like, get the flu.
I'm gonna make like a channel for Discord emergencies, because we already had this happen.
Yeah, I know you had an 911 line on that Discord there. Okay.
Should've known this.
So what my plans, and when I say my plans, I'm talking to school, okay? I'm just kind of the mouthpiece for them right now. I want all 7 of you. How many of you anticipate going into the advanced program this summer?
I would like to.
Why aren't all your hands up?
I want truck service. I want some time on the truck for a while before I go in.
You can,
Juggable.
as an EMT basic, you're not gonna do much on the truck. You're gonna be an ambulance driver.
I get to learn all the buttons and stuff. Give me a
You'll
little bit of time
learn as an
operations.
advance. I'm gonna tell you guys right now. I'm not a big proponent of going from advanced EMT straight to paramedic. 'Cause
Yeah.
yes, knowing your way around the truck and seeing some of these things in the field for 6 months or a year is great. Very few people go successfully from one level to the next. Bradley?
Yep.
Hey, you made it.
You're here.
All right, we're getting worried about you. We just heard the word concussion and something like that.
Hey, you good, bud?
You're all in one piece?
You want a donut?
Is there something under that hat?
How much for steak over
Can we see?
All right.
Hair's going.
So, question we just had, Bradley, was, do you anticipate going into the advanced course this summer? No? Not really? Why is that? No, just put you on the spot.
Breathe, Lego.
And like I said, Joseph's question there, he wants to get some truck time before he goes into advanced. You're not picking up a whole lot more at the advanced level. You get the ability to do IV, and a little bit more invasive and airway and things like that. I tell you, you're going to be, not that you won't be picked up immediately by any service as a basic, but you're a lot more marketable as an advanced. You're gonna get paid a little better as an advanced. You're going to, again, as that advanced, you look at some of these services, you may within 6 months, based on what you show, your abilities, you may be on a 911 truck in the city. That's something as a basic, you're never gonna see a 911 truck as a basic.
Yeah.
Okay? EMS Care and Community Ambulance now run 6 stations in Columbus, 911 stations. They used to run 2 apiece. When Care Ambulance got sold and went back across the river, those 2 stations they had went respectively 1 each to EMS Care and to Community. Okay, so they're running right now 3 911 trucks just in the city of Columbus. Community Ambulance also runs 1, maybe 2 911 trucks in Chattahoochee County. Community Ambulance runs 911 trucks all over, just south of Atlanta.
It's more just like a procedure thing. getting used to how civilian side does their setup in the trucks.
And you guys will get that.
Lots of
You guys will get that. That's part of learning in anything, whether you take a job at McDonald's, you're gonna learn from day one how the system goes, and you're gonna get stronger and stronger. You're gonna do the same thing in EMS.
Yeah.
You don't go in there and get thrown to the wolves on day one.
I just hear the horror stories of how much you guys get taken to court on the civilian side, and I'm like, if I don't get my PCRs done before I go EMTA, something's gonna happen.
All right, well, again, my goal with you guys is to make you confident and feel comfortable at the basic level to go on into the advanced in the summer, okay? I'm telling you this now, right now, I don't see anybody, I think, one hand that says, yeah, I hope by middle of the semester, I have more of you saying, yeah, I feel good and we're gonna go into advanced. Because what I wanna do with you 6 or 7 is move you into advanced. At that point, I've already got service directors from agencies that have basic employees that wanna bring them into the advanced course. Okay,
There's a lot of-
Harris County has just finished a basic EMT class. They have no advanced EMT class. So I've got students from there who are ready to come into an advanced course. So in the summer, I wanna see this class go from 7 of you to hopefully 17 at least. Okay, when we start filling those numbers, we get more adjuncts. Program director position goes back up to a full-time position, things like that. Question?
My question is, will we be able to work as a basic and still be able to attend the event?
You can. It's just like in anything. And I've worked, I won't say I've worked with, I've even fought with some EMS agencies where they hire you and say, oh yeah, we'll work with your school dates. And then they hire you. And then when I go, hey, Joe, you got a clinical? I can't, I gotta work. And then next week it's the same thing, oh, I gotta work. And I've called that director and said, hey, look, you hired Joe under the premise that you were gonna work with his school. And every time he's got class, or every time he's got clinical, you call him into work, or you schedule him to work, So most of them will, and most of them are good about it, okay? But you also have to be, you gotta be careful on how much availability you give them. I got one student from the last advanced class, and she graduated, and she got hired a couple of weeks as a basic before she finished the advanced portion. I run into her on that next Saturday morning where I'm flying, I go into one place to pick up a patient. She's on the truck with community ambulance up in Lamar County, Georgia. I said, what are you doing here? Oh, they were short, so they asked me to come up here. Didn't you just do a 24-hour shift on Wednesday in Columbus?
Yeah,
Yeah. And then I did the night truck on Thursday. And then you're here for 24 hours on Saturday. And then you're coming back here again tomorrow night for 12 more hours. You are letting them abuse you. You are letting them basically kill you, okay? So don't do that either. You're gonna have plenty of opportunities to work.
Did you know that you can inject caffeine into an IV bag?
Some people might need it, okay? But again, so yes, you can get a job as a basic somewhere and still go to class, okay? When we get to that point too, I hope that the classes are staying, Tuesday and Thursdays are the best days, that we keep it that way, and then what you can work around, okay? So those are my goals for the future of the class. I want all of you guys to go on to the advanced portion, okay? I want you all to feel comfortable with it. Again, working as a basic and working as an advanced is just a small step above. It's a little bit better pay. You get to do a little bit more, but again, you're not a glorified ambulance driver. And for years and years and years, you ever call a paramedic or an EMT an ambulance driver, it's offensive, okay? It is. We go to school, I didn't spend 10 weeks in EMT school for nothing. I'm not a glorified ambulance driver. But how many of you guys are looking at careers on the fire side? Anybody? Possibly?
Yeah.
It's an option, okay? You have options. As an EMT, as an advanced EMT, as a paramedic, you have options. Fire side is always one. Private service is another. Paramedics in the emergency room, even EMTs in the emergency room as techs. That's an opportunity, okay? I'll help you in any way I can in getting into these jobs, okay? I worked as a paramedic tech in the ER at Midtown for 2.5 years on night shift, okay? Got a real good relationship with the ER director there, okay? If you guys, you do well, you wanted to apply to there, and you want to use me as a reference, I'm I'd be happy to. Okay? Same thing with the fire service. A couple of people in some of the previous classes are all along with the fire department right now. I'll call Chief Macon in a heartbeat and say, hey, look, you know, Joe Blow, he's outstanding, you know. Jane, she did a great job through the school. She's eager, she's initiative. They pick them right up. Okay? So I've got those relationships with people, within the community that can help you guys if you want to advance. Okay? I ramble a lot. I want you guys to be successful in the program. I want you guys, again, I'm going to be patient with you guys, but I need you to be patient with me too, because a lot of this, like I said, I'm finding it out as I go through. Every time I peel back one layer of the onion, there's another layer. Oh my gosh, I thought, you know, we were moving somewhere. So, what questions do you have of me right now?
I've got one. As
What's that?
far as availability of the different services, since you mentioned tax and working with fire, did we get anyone besides Community Ambulance that's going to be offering the ride-alongs and work?
I'm waiting for Matt Dennis, the dean, spoke to the chief of Columbus Fire. He's waiting on a phone call back. We have a clinical agreement that's being worked through with Columbus Fire, so we can get on some of their trucks in the city. Community is already in place. I have the agreement for EMS Care right here that I'm waiting for their HR director to call me back so I can get that signed. I also am going to find out too, we do have a really good relationship with Community Ambulance. What I do want to find out too is if any of you guys are willing to travel a little bit for a clinical. If I can have you go to a clinical rotation with Community out of town in Upson County or Lamar County. It's about a 45-minute to an hour drive. But let me tell you, you go to some of this rural EMS, and you may be the only ambulance in the county. And these guys, they're getting their butts kicked right now. They are running nonstop, the wheels off the truck. Okay, so if you want experience, that's where you're going to get it. And that's what you're going to see. You know, we have a relationship with Harris County. Harris County is not a very high volume service, but if I need to send you there, I will. It's not my preferred place because, again, I want you guys to get volume. Okay, answer your question there. We're still working some of those agreements. Some of those were in the process for the past couple of months and never got completed. Okay, so again, I'm finding out what has been done, what hasn't been started at all, and what's kind of in the process that I've got to finish.
When would you like to start getting this out on trucks? What's going to be our time frame?
My goal is when we get done with the trauma portion here, probably by the mid to end of February. Okay. I want you know, and I agree with Charlotte. We're doing EMS 1150 before 1140 because we want to get the trauma out of the way so you can get on those trucks. You know, it's a toss-up. You may ride in a truck for 4 shifts and never see a good trauma, and all you're running is backaches and diarrhea and, you know, medical calls. Okay. But we want to get you exposed to trauma before you get out on those trucks. Okay. That being said, too, about the trucks, I'm waiting on background checks on a couple of you. I sent an email to the agency yesterday, so I'm waiting for them to come back.
Do we got a list of who's missing what?
I do, and I'll give it to you guys individually.
Okay.
But I don't want to air everybody's business.
Yeah, I mean, email or,
Yeah.
Don't worry.
We'll do that. If there's anything that you haven't started, okay, I think everybody's done, at least initiated their background checks. I'm only waiting on 2 of them to come back, right, or 3 of them to come back. 2, 3, yeah. I'm waiting on 3 of them to come back. Everybody gotten their physicals?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. One thing I did notice in going through your all's files that a lot of you don't have are flu shots. Some do, some don't. And like I was telling Shalee here, to ride EMS, no EMS agency makes a flu shot a requirement. As of right now, they don't. Okay. The reason I say to think about it is when we get to the advanced portion and you go into the ER for clinicals, I don't want to say they require it, but they very, very, very strongly encourage it. It used to be, if you didn't want to get a flu shot, you could sign a piece of paper and says, I decline it, and no one asks a question. Now they've changed their policy. For you to be able to sign a declination statement, you have to have either 1, a medical reason from a doctor saying why you can't have a flu shot, you're allergic to eggs, you're allergic to this, whatever, or a letter from your clergy saying for religious reasons you cannot take a flu shot. That's it. So, if you're gonna go into the advanced portion, that's something to think about when we go into the hospital for clinicals. You know, it used to be, oh, I'll sign a declination statement and we'll wear a mask. Well, guess what? We're all wearing masks anyway. So that was not an issue. Nowhere do I know or have I heard of any service or agency or hospital that's requiring COVID vaccines. Can that change tomorrow? Absolutely. Okay, it can. But that's just a heads up on that. Okay. Any other questions besides rides? When we do, I know I came into you guys, and I've only been in your guys' class a couple of times with you, so I don't remember what I've said to what groups anymore. I know in the past, whenever I schedule clinicals, that's still my main role. It's always been through group texts, through my phone. The dean is not a big fan of us communicating on our personal cell phones with you guys. Okay, that's why the Remind app came up, and I'm learning it. When you told me the other day that it kept sending you a message, I don't know why.
It sent like four of the same thing.
On my end, it says one time I sent you a message and one time you replied. So I'm kind of learning how that works. So again, bear with me on that, but we'll use that as our primary communication because it doesn't, you know, I had to enter you through either an email or a phone number to send you the invitation, but then again, it all comes back through and we're not, you know, sharing it. That. If anything ever comes up and you guys need to speak to me, I don't have a problem at all when you pick up the phone and call me, okay? If you need to, shoot me a text at Remind and say, hey, can you call me or can I call you? And I will, okay? Because again, you can only get so much of a message relayed through a text. You don't get, you know, you don't get the feeling that if you're upset, I want to know. I can't get it through a text.
It's all in caps.
Yeah. Quit yelling at me, Joseph. Damn it.
I'm upset.
Some people text all the time in caps, and I'm like, damn, are they always pissed, or what's the problem here? No, it's just the way they do it. So, but we'll communicate through the Remind app. Okay. Has anybody had a problem with the Remind app at all? You've all got my messages. I've learned that an announcement is a bad way to send a lot of information because I'm limited to 140 characters. So I wrote out this big long message one day, and I was like, oh crap. Okay, let me take out that word. And then I found that in a conversation, I could write you guys War and Peace, and they'll take every letter of it. Okay, so again, I'm learning through there. So, but we'll communicate through that. Let me see where I'm at here. So we're moving over. We're back. Anybody have any questions with Charlotte or the program? Anything you want to discuss? Divulge. If you want to do it privately, if you have any questions, let me know. Okay. I am your point of contact for the course. Okay. Like I said, Charlotte is still an adjunct. Okay. If you have questions concerning the course or work or an assignment or a test, please bring it through me. Okay. Charlotte has chosen not to hold the program director position, so please bring those to me because I will address them either to the dean or the new program director when they come on board. Okay. Nothing against Charlotte, but if she wants that position as an adjunct, she needs to maintain that position as an adjunct. Okay. So I don't want, you know, may sound bad, serving two masters. We can't do that. Okay. So if you have a question or a concern or anything about the course, you can bring it up publicly, you can talk to me privately, and we'll get it addressed and we'll get it corrected, hopefully to your satisfaction.
All we've got left right now for this semester is going to be trauma and special populations.
Trauma and special populations, okay? So again, let me hand you guys each one of the schedules. This is just for the next 2 weeks. Today, and for those of you that have to leave early, you kind of see what the assignment is. I told Shalee what the assignment was. Today we're going to cover chapters 27 and 28. Chapter 28 is a long, long chapter. I think it's got 151 PowerPoints. But a lot of it is pictures and stuff, so we'll get through them quickly. I do want to be out of here today by no later than about 3 o'clock. Okay? Is that going to be a problem for anybody else besides yourself? No? Does anybody have a big problem with Tuesdays being heavy days and Thursdays probably being about a half a day?
They're running around at work, so I can guarantee next week.
Well, and again, and like I said, I'm giving you the notice today, so I don't expect you to be able to change things tomorrow. We do have, every Tuesday, this classroom is reserved for us all through the day. So we can come in here and lecture all day. We also have 1208 available every Tuesday and Thursday. What that does is, and by me being able to secure both of those rooms is, it does give us flexibility. When I talk about flexibility too is, if on a Thursday, I know there's gonna be 7 of you in class, and I've only got an instructor available for Thursday afternoon or Thursday morning, we may only be able to do lab with half of you on Thursday, and I may take 3 or 4 of you and say, hey, can any of you guys do lab Tuesday afternoon instead? And we'll shift that a little bit. I want you guys to get at least 3 hours of lab time, hands-on every week, okay? Looking at the schedule, like I said, this is just for this week and next week. I'm still tweaking the rest of it after that. In looking at the schedule, I saw you guys have a lecture every Tuesday and every Thursday, and very limited lab time, very limited time where you had working on actual hands-on skills.
We had about an hour, maybe an hour and a half of lecture.
When I went through paramedic school, I went to school Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, and we knew that at least 50% of the time we were gonna be on the ground doing skills. We were gonna have our hands on equipment. That's how you get comfortable in this field, okay? I want you guys to have that comfort level. I've got students too that, you know, they graduate and they're like, okay, well, you know, I'm really shaky on my IVs, or when they go in and do their first IVs in the emergency room, I don't know who to feel sorrier for, the student or the patient, because they're both shaking. Oh, I've had patients look at students coming out like this and say, okay, stop.
What's his name? Did it
I had to
again?
talk to, what's his name, Alejandro? And
Yeah,
Alejandro scared me to death.
He
Oh
came
my
out like
gosh.
this, he went,
Yep,
I went.
he goes fishing, he goes fishing pretty hard.
And something else too, you guys, I know Charlotte's been your primary instructor, so you guys have gotten Charlotte 98% of the time, okay? That's good for consistency, but what I think is a negative part of that is, if I come in here and I teach you, it's the Frank way, and Frank way is the only way, and I don't wanna hear any other way, and I don't ever wanna see you do any other way, that's a disservice to you, okay? Because there's more than one way to skin a cat, okay? I'll show you my way, Jimmy will show you his way, Melissa will show you her way, Charlotte will show you her way. Some of them they're gonna be very similar, but there may be some little nuances that are different than all of us. And you're gonna say, well, you know what? I like the way that Frank tapes his IP, but I like the way that Jimmy, you know, finds the vein. Or I like the way Melissa secures the site when she's gonna do a needle stick, okay? And you're gonna take the best of all those 3 different ways and make your way, okay? I'm never gonna tell you this is the only way to do it. If you ever hear me say the Grady way, or the Air Methods way, or the Columbus Fire way, okay, you've heard the Grady way before? I've had disagreements with the Grady way. I've landed at many scenes where Grady EMS runs a show and go, what are you guys doing to this poor patient? Why are you running this 20-foot long backboard strap through and around and in between their legs and around their shoulders and crossing, and this guy's got a fractured pelvis and bilateral femur fractures. Do you know what you're doing to this poor guy? You know, you're killing him, okay? So again, I want you guys to learn practical skills. I want you guys to learn skills that if you leave here tomorrow and you go get a job at EMS Care or at Community or at Columbus Fire, that you're familiar with how to put a patient on the backboard, a standard way, okay? So we'll work on that. And like I said, that's one of the benefits you'll get from having different instructors. Now, if we tell you something completely different one from the other, let me know, okay? The material is the material. Okay. The practical side of it is where you're going to get little differences. Okay. I mean, unless one of us comes in and just telling you something completely off the wall, and if we are, let me know. If I'm telling you something, you know, question it. Okay. So we're good on where we are there. Schedule-wise, we covered. Tuesday's going to be heavier on lecture, with Thursdays dedicated more for lab. There may be some days. And again, I can start looking further out in the schedule and say, if one day we're going to have a light lecture day Tuesday morning, but we're going to have half of you come in that Tuesday afternoon for lab, I'll let you know ahead of time, okay? So I may take volunteers to stay later that day, or, you know, that may be a day that you have to work and can't be here. Good, I can use the other half of the class. And then Thursday, we have flexibility. Another thing being said is, thus having both this classroom and 1208 on Tuesdays, if we get done with lecture today, we're done in the morning, you guys can take the rest of the day off, or we can go into the lab, okay? Nothing says, if I don't have it written on this paper, that we can't do it, okay? You guys have been cleared through the president being here with our social distance, and we'll keep everything clean as we can, you know, but I want you guys to get plenty of time, work on the skills and get your hands on, okay? All right. Does anybody have any paperwork to turn in that they had started for Charlotte that hadn't been turned in yet? Shop records, physical
I haven't
form?
gotten I finished the FEMA training, and I still haven't gotten certificates, like an email either saying if I passed or failed or anything. I got screenshots showing I finished it, but that's about it.
They should have sent you a verification email almost immediately.
Yeah, it should have been at the completion of the course when you took the test, there should have
Yeah,
been.
I don't know what happened, but I think.
I'd log back in and either hit up their help service or try to do it again.
Yeah, log back into it, and because sometimes soon if you log back into it and look, it'll either tell you you completed the course, or it'll give you an option where you can print your certificate or view your certificate.
Maybe that's what they gave me, and I just didn't do it. It was like 3 in the morning when I finished.
I check your email again, cause they'll have a huge.
FEMA training at 3 in the morning, that's hardcore right there, okay?
Mhm.
You were probably having trouble sleeping, right?
I don't sleep very well.
Okay, well, all right.
I hope it doesn't timestamp when I did mine, cause it was in the middle of the night too.
Gotcha.
Tentatively, I'll let you guys know
You do it
over
at
the
3 o'clock
next,
in the morning. FEMA training.
over the next couple of weeks. Today, you guys are stuck with me and only me, okay? On Thursday, Melissa Gordy will be here with you guys in the lab, okay? We'll be reviewing, bandaging, soft tissue management, you know, stopping the bleeding, things like that. I'm coming off a shift that morning, so I should be in about 10:30. If Melissa's got everything running and doesn't need my help, I'm gonna be peeling back layers of the onion and finding out more and more things I don't know yet.
She's an ER tech, correct?
She's not. She is a paramedic, full-time with Fort Benning EMS, part-time still with Care Ambulance. She's been doing this for a while.
Okay, so she's still, everything's up to date on like field trauma and stuff like that now?
Yeah. A little on the, you know, so that's a little on her. Jimmy Bloodworth is a lieutenant now with Columbus Fire Department. It's funny because in the fire department, when you get up to the lieutenant level, you don't ride an ambulance much, okay? He's in charge of Station 9, which is their high-angle rescue station up off Macon Road. One of the things too with when we get on with Columbus Fire is riding. If I can send you guys out there to ride on M9, so a lot of times you'll be at the station with Jimmy. Jimmy will take you under his wing and show you all kinds of things, as well as most of the medics there. We had some of our students in the past who wanted to go into the fire service, and they go out there to Station 9, and Jimmy would run them through the training field. Drill field is in his backyard at Station 9, and he had them running through the whole CPAT proficiency test. Okay, by the time they got out of this class and went and tested for CPAT, they smoked it. Okay, so Jimmy is a wealth of knowledge. He is a paramedic there. He works part-time at Marion County. He teaches with Georgia EMS, their tactical emergency combat care course. So again, he's a wealth of knowledge, a real good instructor. To make me sound old, I went into the fire service in 2000 with Jimmy's dad. I know, and I watched Jimmy grow up, and he's a fantastic medic now. That's dating me. I was in paramedic school probably before all of you were born. I was in paramedic school in '93. Anybody born in
1992.
Look at you. There you go.
89.
Okay, there we go. All right, good.
2008 for my first game back.
So that's a little bit on your instructors, but for the next 2 weeks, like I said, Thursday, Melissa will be the primary. I may be in and out, but I'm hopefully going to be unlocking Pearson and figuring out how to write you guys a test for Tuesday, okay? Because, I really want you guys to take a test. Okay.
So the homework will be available by then, or,
Huh?
I said the homework will be available by then? Will it know
I'm
by
hoping,
Thursday?
It's on there, you just have to scroll down to chapter 27, 28. You
So-
can do the homework, the pre-test, and read the
Did it
chapter.
let
It's
you
still
do it?
good, it's just,
It's just not showing the
Yeah,
chapter
nothing's
test.
on the calendar.
Oh, there's no-
Yeah, nothing's on the calendar.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
it's still
the
there.
calendar, and I went in there yesterday with the dean over my shoulder, because the guy at IT told me, don't make any changes to the course without going through me. So I doctored up a whole schedule for the semester, made changes, made them, appropriate to this class. And I was gonna submit it to him, so he could post it on Blackboard, and the dean said, oh, no, here, we'll do it. I was like, okay, as long as you're over my shoulder, if I screw up all of Blackboard, I want you to be my witness.
wrong, you
So-
want him to be blamed.
He was the one pushing buttons too, I got out of the way, so, again, they're giving me a little bit of, creative leeway, and if I screw up, hopefully I don't get canned for it, but, we're learning. So if you can go on and do it through Blackboard, great. I'm trying to learn how I can see it through Blackboard again, because I got on there yesterday and they told me that I wasn't authorized to see anything. I had to get Charlotte's permission. The dean says, we'll fix that tomorrow, so that's today. I don't have a whole lot of time to sit up there and do that. Tomorrow I'm on shift, and hopefully Thursday I'll be able to do some more of this stuff. For next week, if you're looking at your schedule, Tuesday's a busy day. If you can be here all day Tuesday, I need you here all day Tuesday, because Thursday, we don't have an instructor, okay? So my goal is on Tuesday, I'm available all day, Jimmy's available all day, and Melissa will be in here after 1 o'clock. So, my goal again, knock out all the lecture as early as possible, whether we get done by 11 a.m. or we get done by noon or 1, then in the afternoon, if I have to, depending on the class size, the dean has told us we can get away with 5, maybe 6 in the lab, but that's pushing it. They want 4 to 1. We maybe would push a little bit on a case-by-case basis, but with a class of 7, I'd love to have all 7 of you in here every single day, but life's gonna happen and it won't work out that way.
We always do
But,
it with fire and death.
that being said, on that Tuesday, the 19th, we may bring half of you in here with some equipment and half of you over there, and after an hour or 2, we'll swap places, okay, because I'll have all 3 adjuncts available that day. Another thing that's gonna happen on Tuesday the 19th, why I need you all here, Frank Killebrew, the Region 7 training coordinator, will be here. He's gonna get all of you guys enrolled in the LMS system, the license management system. The LMS system is new, it's just come online within the last year and a half. I did my first license renewal for myself through it, and it's some challenges, but because it's new. For you guys as EMS students, everything you do now is gonna be tracked through the LMS, okay? It did come on as a requirement last semester, but we chose and were able to not make that change in the middle of the class.
So redoubling up with the nremt.org site with our classification stuff there, or?
Well, the LMS is required for you to
access
test
and-
national rescue,
okay.
because everything that you do, as far as I understand it, your PCRs you write, they'll all be entered into LMS. All your tracking of your training progress is tracked in LMS. So it's one of those systems that once it's all done, LMS can relay all the information to National Registry for your testing. Okay, so he will be here. It's new to me also.
Yeah.
So he wanted to come today. I told him, I said, I already knew we were gonna have a limited class size, and I'm the only one here. So by coming next Tuesday, I want hopefully all 7 of you in here. Myself, Jimmy, and Melissa will also all 3 be here. Gary may even be able to be here. If he's done with all his hiring process by then, we're just waiting on one of his background checks to be done, and that's just technicalities. Last I heard, he wasn't a mass murderer, and he should clear a background check, but you never know. You never know how people are.
On
We may
that
get
note,
surprises.
we had something mentioned last semester about having someone come in and teach us the electronic way of doing PCRs. They bring in the system, let us work out a few like practice versions. Do we still have that online, or is that?
I don't know. I'll find out where or what that option is. Every service is gonna use a different you know.
We have anyone still doing written up, or is everyone doing electronic now?
I'd probably turf that more to Melissa or Jimmy, because they're riding on trucks. I haven't ridden
Yeah,
a truck
you're
in
doing
like
flight
forever.
views.
We do, when we take a patient to the hospital, we do a handwritten PCR as a handoff, but then we go back and we do a thing called EMS charts on the computer, and but, you know, every service, some will use Zoll, some will use RescueNet, some use EMS charts, some use Golden Hour. There's so many different systems out there. So for us to sit here and go into detail on a particular system, you may never see that again. So it may not be a big benefit to you. We'll go over the whole, you know, chart writing procedures and what's important. And then again, when you get a job at whatever service it be, that's a learning process that they're gonna understand. Nobody walks in. Now, if you walk into a service and, oh yeah, I worked for 5 years at, you know, Harris County EMS and this is what we use, then great, you're proficient with it already. But, you know, learning the electronic charting, it just takes some time, okay? Will we have that option? If we do, I'll get it to you. One of the things I like about keeping our Thursdays pretty much open for lab or some flexibility is when opportunities come up. Last class, an opportunity came up through Jimmy. He was doing a vehicle extrication course with the fire department. He says, hey, I can get all of our students into it. And we had 12 students go down there and cut cars open with Columbus Fire Department.
Nice.
Right? They loved it. It was an opportunity that doesn't come along all the time. For next week, for the 21st, when I saw I didn't have an instructor, because 2 of my instructors were doing the trauma skills lab with the Region 7 trauma symposium. I was like, damn, I can't have an instructor. My wife, as brilliant as she is, don't ever tell her I said that. She said, why don't you see if you can get your students to audit the trauma course, the trauma lab? And I did. I called the RTAC coordinator, good friend of mine, Brian. I got 8 students. Can they, I know the class may be full, but can they audit the course? Can they at least watch, assign them to one of your students and have them watch? Because it's going to be a great opportunity. It was a cadaver lab.
Mm-hmm.
You were using actual human cadavers to do procedures on, okay? He said, man, that's a great idea, I'd love to do it, but because of COVID and class size, we couldn't get that many people into the lab. So again, that was an opportunity I was gonna try to get for you. And then a week later, they've done away with the whole trauma symposium in person, and it's all virtual. So again, opportunities are gonna come and go. I wanna leave us a little bit of flexibility, but between myself and Jimmy and Melissa and listening to what's going on in the community, if an opportunity comes up that we can get you into, I'll offer it to you, okay? When we did the cutting of cars, I had to jump through some hoops and get permission from the dean to take you guys on a field trip. And so we did a field trip to the junkyard and we cut cars open all day, okay? So we will definitely take advantage of those opportunities. So when I know of those things too, I'll let you guys know as much notice as possible. So if you have to rearrange schedule, whether it be daycare, whether it be school, whether it be work, that you can try to take advantage of those opportunities. That's why I try to leave a little bit of flexibility in the schedule. When I get the whole semester posted on Blackboard, you'll see that there's some days where it's just makeup, catch up, okay? And catch up doesn't mean we got a day off. I mean, if you want to take the day off because you're so strong and you don't need any other practice, then hey, you know what, hallelujah, I'm happy for you. But I want to have the opportunity for you guys to come in and review things, whether it's academics, whether it's hands-on skills, whether it's procedures. The most intimidating part for any student, whether it be EMT level, advanced, or paramedic, is patient scenario, patient assessment, whether it be medical, whether it be trauma. And I'll get students come in all the time. Okay, what am I doing? Am I doing a trauma patient? I don't know. When the tones go off, you don't know what kind of patient you're going to get until you get there. You may get limited information on your dispatch call, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't get yourself in the mindset, okay, when I go to work, my first call is going to be a medical patient. Doesn't happen that way. Okay? I want you guys to be comfortable that if I give you a scenario right now, you got a 28-year-old male on the floor, unresponsive. What do you do? Is he medical? Is he trauma? Hell, find out.
Find out if he's gone.
You're going to figure it out as you do your assessment. So I want to pound assessment into you guys. I want you guys to feel comfortable. How much assessment have you guys done so far?
A decent amount, but as far as like PCRs and actually writing it up, we did one.
Yeah.
And PCRs, you'll get I say you get a lot more of that when you do, your ER clinicals. Again, I want y'all to go to advance.
Just don't wanna be the first guy, like, on that truck and writing it out in crayon.
And again, you're not, as a student on that truck, doing your clinicals this semester, or you're doing them as a student in the ER next semester, again, that is not a legal PCR. It is a learning tool, okay? I want you guys to write PCRs that are pertinent to the patient. Again, I've gone round and round with students in the past that I'll sit there and read 6 PCRs they've written on 6 different patients. And every single one is exactly the same except the patient, date of birth, and age. They're all written in the very same format, every patient, you know. And I was like, why are you writing a full trauma assessment on a 68-year-old woman with back pain, or foot pain, or difficulty breathing? Well, that's the way we were told we have to write it this way. Everyone has to be the same. I'm like, no, it's not. Okay, again, it's gotta be pertinent to the patient. Okay, so we'll learn those. We will work on those. I wanna make it to where we can do it too, even as we incorporate it as a whole. If you do a patient assessment scenario, I wanna take advantage of all the equipment we have in that lab. Okay, when we did that class with you guys were like, oh, we're not allowed to touch that stair chair. Why not? Well, that's the fancy one, we can't use it.
Yeah.
Bull. You know, I want you guys getting in and out of that ambulance on a regular basis.
I
Okay?
think we did, what, stretcher operations twice?
Well, I wanna start doing it to where, with
Yeah.
all this lab time and skills lab time that we're gonna have, when you do a patient assessment on the ground, you put that mannequin or that your fellow student, probably mannequins, because, you know, we can't, you know, get all up in each other's face and touch each
Lift
other.
me.
But I want you to go through it, you do that assessment on that mannequin, you lift that patient, you get him on the stretcher, you load him in the truck, get in the truck, continue your assessment in the truck. If you say it's a load and go and I put him on a backboard and we're in the truck, let's move our scenario to the truck. Okay? When you make a radio call, let's pick up the radio and call it. Let's make it real, okay? That's what I want you guys to be able to do. So, that's where we've got a lot of flexibility in this schedule, and I wanna take advantage of it. I want you guys to be able to feel comfortable with everything we're doing, okay? All right, I think I rambled on way longer than I needed to. Anybody lost, confused, have any questions? Bradley, do you have a community ambulance form that was signed?
Yeah, I don't have it with me.
You don't have it with you?
I forgot to get it this
Okay,
morning.
I can give you another blank one if you wanna fill it out, or just bring it to me on Thursday.
I'll
Okay.
bring it on Thursday.
You here Thursday? Okay, just bring that on Thursday. Let's see what else we got.
So next Thursday, do we come here, what do we do?
Next Thursday, we had no class. I'm planning to do everything that we would have done on Thursday, we're gonna get all done on Tuesday. So, that being said, think about this. If any of you guys on Tuesday can or are willing to do a late session, if we need it. And when I say late session, it might be 3 to 6. Okay? If anyone has that capability, just let me know. Okay? We may not need it, because if I can get all the lecture done on Tuesday morning, then Tuesday afternoon, 12:30 to 3:30, because I have 2 classrooms and I've got 3 adjuncts here that day, we can work it. So again, I don't anticipate Tuesday being a late evening. I do want to be out of here every day by 3:30-ish, because on the day, I've got my son 50% of the time. When he gets out of school at 3:50, I need to be on my way there by 3:30 to go way out to Aaron Cole Middle School to pick him up. Okay, so I don't want to be where we're rushing you guys, but as a goal, our class times are going to be 8:30 to 11:30. We get roughly an hour, 45 minutes for lunch. We'll come back and go 12:30 to 3:30. You know, if I don't have to get away, or you've got an adjunct here that can stay till 4, we're never going to be here really past 3:30, 4 o'clock. Everybody good with that? Okay. Anything else? Y'all done hearing me ramble? You guys have any?
Oh, no, I'm thinking about, how I'm gonna break this to my job. I can do it.
Forcefully.
I can. Forcefully.
What do you do?
I'm a behavioral analyst.
It's be a good class to analyze some behaviors, right?
They're not that interesting.
Study this
But,
guy.
big boy.
All right.
That just hurt my feelings.
I got everything I
I
need to
feel
know.
personally
That's
attacked.
All right, I think I've covered that. You know who your instructors are for the next 2 weeks. No class next Thursday. That'd be lecture Tuesdays. Like I said, when you look at the schedules, if you can go into My Brady and do the homework assignment and do it that way, great. If you've done it through there, just let me know. Again, I've got to figure out how I can go in there and see it. Okay, and I'm hoping I can learn that by this Thursday. Again, me being on shift tomorrow, coming in here Thursday is really the only day I've got. Friday the school is closed. And I thought, oh, well, next week I got Monday. Well, Monday's a holiday, the school is closed again, so we come right back and go right into class. So I'm hoping to have you guys a test ready by next Tuesday. I hope it doesn't break your hearts if I don't have it ready, but we will make it up. If not that Tuesday afternoon, the following. But I don't want us to get behind to where you guys are getting more and more information and testing on something that was from a week prior. So I apologize for not having that yet. But again, like I told you, I was handed it with 10 days notice, and oh, by the way, school's closed for the next 3 weeks, and you can't come in here and do anything. Okay.
Just to ask, aside from this course, do you guys have any other responsibilities for different classes, Mondays, Wednesdays?
In the school? No.
Okay.
They tried to do that to us a couple semesters ago. You need to teach medical terminology to the medical assistant students and to the respiratory therapy. We want you to do an A&P. We're like, oh, no. We barely have enough time.
So as we approach like skills tests and stuff, maybe we can get hop in the lab Monday or Wednesday for a little bit extra time?
With us?
This Monday.
No, not like coming up soon, but skills tests
In the
towards the end
future,
of the semester.
if we have it available, if I have an adjunct available, again, right now, we're very, very limited on adjuncts, okay? And that may be something that, as it comes available, we've done it in the past where on Mondays and Wednesdays, we open the lab up for tutoring. The thing that's hard to do about that is we've got to get approval from the president of the school to have you by name in here on that day, and it's hard to do, okay, because, you say, oh yeah, I'll come in next Tuesday. Well, I gotta go through a whole process of getting that approved ahead of time. With us having a lot of flexibility between Tuesdays and Thursdays and having 2 different rooms, like I said, I'm glad that they gave us the lab, because in one of the previous classes, we used to share that lab with another program. I was like, why in the hell is the radiology department, or whatever the course was, in our EMS lab? They're not using anything in there, they're just using that space. So luckily, we've got that secured for us and only us all the time. So whether it be on a Tuesday,
We just have to give you advance notice like a week or 2 ahead.
well, like I said, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we're
Yeah.
almost always gonna have an instructor available. And that's why I've built in times in the schedule there where there's plenty of time to do review and hands-on. And I was seeing on the schedule where you guys were doing very limited
That's
hands-on.
why I'm trying to anytime you can.
As soon as I shut up, quit talking, and we cover this, the rest of the day is open to just do lab time, okay? We can do it today, we can do it any Tuesday. If we get done with the lecture, I wanna get all the lecture out of the way, and then we've got that Tuesday afternoon, we can play in the lab all afternoon, okay? Thursdays, that's all I wanna do, and if there's only 5 or 6 of you in lab that morning, and you wanna stay, all 5 or 6 of you, or 2 of you wanna come back Thursday afternoon to do more lab, we'll do it, okay? As long as I've got an adjunct here, okay? If I'm the only one here and I was like, hey, look, I really gotta work on 3 other things, we may not be able to do it, but I wanna give you guys the most opportunity you can, okay? All right. Everybody need a quick bathroom break before we jump into trauma overview? Make it quick. Came in here yesterday, and I'm glad I did, because the computer hadn't been turned on in 3 weeks, so of course it took forever for that to boot up. And then there was an update that took 15 minutes, and I was in here with the dean, and we were looking stuff over. We turned the projector on, and it was showing for about 30 seconds, and then pop! The bulb blew while we were here. I was like, well, that's not good. And it was like 3:30, almost 4 in the afternoon. I was like, is maintenance still here? He's like, hold on.
I think it was our lab. last semester, the lab room went out on us. and-
So, after that happened, I went into the lab, I logged on the computer there, again, you had to go through the whole startup and update, and that one was not working. That guy who was in here this morning, the IT guy, I caught him in the hallway, and I was like, hey, he's like, oh, this projector doesn't work, so he fixed this one and that one. So, luckily, I didn't come in here at 8:15 today trying to, get ready to do this, cause as you can see, it was way behind. Are any of you bothered by me having my mask down? If anybody does, let me know, I will, I'll wear it. I got into one of the instructors up in the biology department who we share an office, and we're 8 feet apart in a cubicle, and I take my mask off when I get at my desk, and he didn't have the decency to say, hey man, you know, I really feel more comfortable if you would. He wrote a letter to his dean, or emailed his dean, who emailed my dean, who emailed me back, says, hey, you know, if you're uncomfortable or I make you uncomfortable, let me know, and I'll cover it. It's just very hard to talk a lot with this on. Ready to roll?
Is there,
All right, trauma. That's why we all get into EMS, right? The fun part.
Band-Aids, clean dirt?
That's it. We only get in here for the blood and guts and gore, all right? In the overview, we're gonna talk about a little bit about the kinetics of trauma. Kinetics is related to the mechanisms of injury, okay? Forces applied to the body, and how you're gonna look at those forces that are applied to the body to give you or raise your index of suspicion as to what kind of injuries should you look for, what kind of injuries can you anticipate the patient going over. We'll talk a lot about mechanisms of injury. The multi-system trauma patient, you know, I know when you go through this in chapters, you're working section by section. We're working musculoskeletal, we're checking GI, we're going integumentary, we're going, you know, neuro. Your multi-system trauma patient can be affected in multiple organ systems. Okay? So you got to keep that in mind. We'll talk about the golden period. Used to be called the golden hour, and now what they call the platinum 10 minutes. Discuss the trauma system a little bit and principles of trauma care. Right? We can look at this. I've never been a real big fan of these case studies, but we'll shoot it out here. EMTs Nina Segal and Scotty Lundquist responded to the report of a person shot in a hunting accident. After a 15-minute response to the remote area, again, all hunting accidents are remote, let me tell you. They're fun to get to. They meet state police on the scene. They confirm that it was a hunting accident and all weapons have been secured. The patient's a 27-year-old man was actually shot by another hunter with a high-velocity rifle. Because when you're dispatched to there, you may only be dispatched to a gunshot wound. Okay, so what's your first concerns?
Scene safety.
Scene safety. Where's the gun? Who shot who? Was it self-inflicted? Was it accidental? Was it an assault? A lot of questions come in there, okay? So you already know as you arrive, police say it was a hunting accident, the weapons are all secured, okay? You size up the scene and see the police officer holding direct pressure to the patient's thigh. Patient's lying supine on the ground, seems a little combative and confused. He's pale and sweating despite the cool temperatures, okay? What are you thinking at that point?
Hypoxia,
Hypoxia, hypovolemia, okay. He's pale and sweating, but it's 38 degrees out, okay. Think about the body's response to that hypovolemia. Think about bleeding control. You already got somebody holding direct pressure, okay. So we'll keep these things in mind. We'll come back to these a little bit at the end of the chapter. All right, your priorities and managing the patient are what?
The gunshot wound, sure.
Okay. Remember your ABCs.
Mhm.
Always remember your ABCs. Okay. Airway, bleeding, circulation. And all your assessments of your patient. You come upon a patient in your general impression, and you walk up and it, you know, if Valida gives you a scenario that, okay, you notice bright red squirting blood from his thigh. Okay.
It's
ABC, yeah.
B is automatically someone needs to control that, okay? And that can be done simultaneously. I'm applying pressure, my partner's applying pressure to that site as I'm opening the airway, as I'm assessing the breathing, so things do happen concurrently, okay? Everything doesn't happen in a 1, 2, 3. I know on paper and by the checklist, everything's in a 1, 2, 3, but things are gonna happen dynamically, okay? And you need to be able to be the one managing that. So your priorities in this is definitely bleeding control, and someone's already got hands on the pressure, on that bleeding wound, okay? What information will help the EMTs determine the extent of the patient's injuries? What do you think will help us figure out any other injuries?
Well, aside from general examination and impression of the patient, maybe finding out what type of weapon was used.
Okay, knowing the type, why do we need to know that?
It would determine how big the bullet is and whether it bounced around or if it went right through.
And that's what we'll talk about in kinetics of trauma. We'll talk about the mass of the bullet, the velocity of the bullet. They did say it was a high-powered rifle.
High velocity.
Hunting rifle, high-powered velocity, big holes, little entrances, big holes,
Big exit.
big cavitation injuries inside, okay? We wanna look at, we talked about examining the patient. How are we examining that patient? Somebody sitting there, I'm holding pressure to this, he's wearing blue jeans and he may be wearing a second or third pair of pants because it's cold out hunting.
If we've gotten past the ABCs, we do a focus, then a head to toe.
And expose it, look at that site.
Yeah.
If we've got a gunshot wound, what else are we looking for?
The exit.
Okay, you have one wound, look for a second. Okay, so again, that information, you got the caliber, you got the size of the weapon, how close was the weapon, was he shot from a distance, was he, I've seen hunters many, many, many times, they're climbing up or into their deer stand and they shoot themselves at almost point blank range. Okay, yeah, it's a big hole. But yeah,
Where you see that, like muzzle burns.
that's where a lot of injuries happen, okay? Climbing in and out of that deer stand, I think is the most dangerous part, is usually where they fall out of, or they're sitting in the deer stand, they fall asleep and fall out of it, because you're not properly secured in there, so. It has its own challenges. Trauma makes up a significant portion of your pre-hospital calls, okay? A significant portion that, all your calls are not trauma. Okay, you'll see them when you go on your EMS rides, you'll see them when you start working in the field. There may be days where you don't see a trauma patient in your entire 24-hour shift. Okay, there may be days where all you do is go from trauma to trauma to trauma. Okay, that's the joy and the excitement I get out of this job is it's a variety. You never know what's going to happen. Okay, so but just that trauma makes up a large portion of those calls. Your biggest job is figuring out how extensive is that injury, okay? What, based on the information that you get from that scene or from that assessment, how are you gonna manage this patient, okay? What are your priorities and goals in managing this patient to give them the best chance of survival, okay? A lot of this is gonna be bleeding control, but always remember too, you don't have an airway, you don't have a patient. Your patient's not breathing, I don't care how badly they're bleeding, that bleeding will stop eventually. That patient's still dead if they're not breathing. So don't get distracted, and we'll talk a little bit about distracting injuries in here, and in next week's chapters about musculoskeletal injuries. Distracting injuries that, one, they're distracting to the patient. You may have an angulated fracture of the forearm, and they're screaming, my arm, my arm, my arm, but they're not worried about this big old stab wound they got in their gut, or their eviscerated organs that's gonna kill them. So it's distracting to the patient, but it's also distracting to the providers. You, as a new EMS provider, you have fire and police that are like, oh my God, look at his arm, his wrist turns this way, or his ankle turns out that way. We've all seen those football hits where the guy takes his knee buckles around, they're like, oh my God, did you see what happened to his knee? It's a distracting injury. It's dramatic, but don't get distracted by it, okay? So keep that in mind when you're doing your assessments. Kinetics of trauma. We'll talk about MOI, mechanism of injury. How was that patient injured? What are some typical MOIs?
Falls.
Gunshots, falls,
Car accidents.
Collisions.
car accidents, and types of collisions. Collisions, when you think about car accidents, motorcycle accidents, bicycle accidents, skateboard accidents, you know, versus a wall, that also comes into falls and things like that. Think about assaults, stabbings, you know, hitting the head with a bat, things like that, okay? So always think of, what is that MOI? A lot of times you may have some of that information en route to the patient, okay? You know, every dispatch, you know, responds to the scene of a 27-year-old male assaulted with a baseball bat, okay? So now you're thinking on your way there, okay, baseball bat. He's probably got one knot right on the top of his head, right? No. Somebody's beating somebody with a bat, he can be beaten all over the body with it, okay? So what kind of trauma are you thinking there? Penetrating?
Broken bones.
Or blunt? Blunt trauma, okay? You're dispatched to a stabbing patient. Penetrating or blunt trauma?
Penetrating.
One stab wound?
Multiple.
Maybe two.
Two, three?
Yeah.
Gunshot wounds? How many times were they shot? Okay, you gotta see that. Your assessment of that patient is where you're gonna find those. We came upon the scene of a patient with a gunshot wound. They said gunshot wound to the upper thigh, lower abdomen. We got in the back of the ambulance and they had him exposed to right about here. He had a gunshot wound right here, just upper thigh, right above the pelvis. It was bleeding pretty good. Well, the guy was a jerk. He was drunk as could be. He was having a fit. He was fighting everybody. So they were focused on that one gunshot wound. He was fighting. He was getting real hypovolemic. He was getting real hypoxic. He was weak, thready pulses. We decided to paralyze him, intubate him. Now he's no longer a fight, but now we were able to, okay, well, let's look a little bit better. So as we completely expose him, we found 4 more gunshot wounds to the thighs.
Sometimes they can be pretty hard to find.
Big guy,
Shotgun.
heavy set, dark guy, real hairy fellow too. And we thought we found a total of 5 gunshot wounds between above his knees and below his waist. By the time we got him to Grady to the trauma center and they rolled him and lifted and everything, they found 3 more gunshot wounds, all in that area.
Interesting.
I'll give you one guess. Who shot him?
White.
Or, okay, not who, but, yeah, he was shot by a female. She shot him all up in his junk. Multiple times, okay?
I was
So,
thinking right
again,
there. She didn't
mechanism
want
of
to think
injury,
back.
we were responding to a single gunshot wound. Did it change? Absolutely. And that's how you're gonna find out as you go along in these, analyzing the patients, okay? The science of analyzing MOIs is known as the kinetics of trauma. You hear kinetics, you hear kinematics of trauma. They're used interchangeably. All right. The mechanics of dealing with movement of the bodies, understanding kinetics is helpful in understanding how that mechanism of injury relates to the traumas that your patient's going to have or may have. All right. For all you math whizzes, you don't really need to memorize this, but mass and velocity are your 2 biggest concerns in kinetics of trauma.
Especially
Okay.
velocity.
Mass times the velocity. Which is more important, the mass of an object or velocity?
Velocity, for sure.
Velocity, okay. Because a car traveling at 20 miles an hour versus a tree versus a car traveling at 60 miles an hour versus a tree, which one's more significant? It's the same mass of the car, but the velocity is increased, okay? If you have 2 cars have a head-on collision, both traveling at 40 miles an hour, what's the velocity of those vehicles?
0, because you're 2
But again, you've got 2 opposing forces traveling at 40 miles an hour, okay? So just keep that in mind. Velocity is a lot more significant in determining the injuries, okay? And we'll talk about the different collisions here in a minute. You think about a gunshot wound, a
Incredibly small amount of
low
mass.
speed or a low velocity weapon, shotgun, small caliber handgun versus a rifle, okay, high velocity rifle. The bullet, the mass of the bullet is, I don't want to say the same at all, but again, they're similar in weight and size. But what's more significant? The velocity, okay. All right, so keep those in mind. Estimate the speed of objects involved. You come upon a motor vehicle collision, if you can get from the patient, sir, how fast were you driving? Oh, I was passing that 18-wheeler when I went off the road and struck a tree. Okay, well, you know that this is a 55-mile-an-hour zone. If he was passing another car, estimated you're probably doing 60, 65 at the least, okay? If you can get that information, that's good to know, because when you get to that receiving facility, you telling him that he hit a tree at 65 miles an hour is important, okay? A lot of times too, if your patient can't speak to you or there's no witnesses to what was going on, you just have to go with, okay, well, this is a 45-mile-an-hour speed limit, or, you know, it's a county road in the middle of nowhere where everybody flies, just to give you an estimate idea of how fast were they going.
I want all that, like point of impact, whether it was multiple impacts.
The more information you can give to that receiving facility, the better. And remember, you are their eyes and ears in the field. The docs at the trauma center, when you get there, they have no idea what the scene looks like. Okay? I've had many times where like, well, what happened? Oh, it was a tractor trailer rollover. Oh, what did it look like? I've shown them pictures and go, holy cow, how do you come out of that alive? Okay? So, the more information you can give to that receiving facility, you are their eyes and ears for that, okay?
Speaking on HIPAA, are we allowed to do that?
I don't wanna say you're allowed or not allowed. I've done it. I'll take a picture, take it to the facility, show it to them, and then delete that picture. Now, if you go back home and you post it on Facebook, it says,
Well, yeah.
oh, I just picked up this guy on I-185 southbound at 4 p.m. that was in this wreck. And, okay, well, you know what? Everybody in this area knows what happened there, and there's a whole lot of HIPAA information being disclosed there. But using it as a tool to show that receiving trauma surgeon, there's nothing wrong with it. Okay, what I would do with it afterwards is delete it. Okay. Do I got some cool pictures on my phone? Absolutely. Okay. Will I share them with you? Maybe. Okay. But again, I'm gonna make sure there's no, disclosing HIPAA information. I'm not gonna tell you on what date and what time and what county I picked that patient up in, because that may be your brother's best friend's cousin, and you're like, oh yeah, I remember he died, and now, you know, Frank's running around here showing pictures to everybody about it. Okay?
Do we, with our like teams, or do teams nowadays actually keep that stuff for the company as information for the PCR reports, or they just
do that?
It's out?
I would not do that.
Okay.
And if you were ever called to a deposition
Mhm.
or called to court, I would not say, oh yeah, here's a picture on my phone, I've got it from 3 years ago.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying, like, if we was like a system or anything that we would turn that kind of
And
information.
there's nowhere in any PCR that you should be uploading a photo of the accident
Yeah.
or anything like that. Okay.
Plus, usually cops take pictures, don't they?
It's the cop's job to investigate. They take pictures. If a lawyer wants pictures of the scene, they get it from law enforcement. They should not be getting it from fire or EMS. Okay? If you use something like that, again, as a tool to take to that receiving facility, show it to them, they're gonna be appreciative of it, because again, it's gonna give them a different understanding of as to why is that patient here? Or why, you know, why are we seeing the injuries we're seeing? Okay? But I wouldn't make it a rule that's something you wanna do all the time, and you definitely don't ever share it on social media.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. All right, acceleration, deceleration, the laws of inertia. Body at rest will remain at rest. That's how we want it to stay. Body in motion remains in motion until it's acted upon by something else. Meaning that tree that you struck at 60 miles an hour, okay? That car that struck you from behind, okay, while you were stopped at a red light. It's acted upon by another outside force. The faster the change in speed, the greater the extent of injuries, the greater the force, okay? If you're sitting at a red light and the little old lady behind you bumps into your car at 5 miles an hour, is that significant? Probably not, okay? But you're sitting at a red light and you're rear-ended by a tractor trailer at 40 miles an hour, we got a lot of mass and we got a lot more velocity. So much more significant because of the greater changes in either acceleration or deceleration. Does a fall kill you?
Depending on how.
No, I can fall from 10 feet or a
It's the rest
mile.
of the organs.
The fall doesn't hurt you. It's that sudden stop at the end.
Yeah.
It's that sudden deceleration. I can fall all day long. Okay? Falls don't kill you. The end of the fall is what kills you. Okay? That's my joke for today.
I was about to say.
Doesn't get any better than that. Energy energy changes form and direction, energy travels in that straight line again unless it meets some interference. You're hit by another vehicle, you're hit by another object. You strike an object to change the direction of that energy. Okay. 3 types of impacts in a vehicle collision. Think about this now. As your body is in a vehicle, every time that impact takes place, every time that collision takes place, there's an impact. Right? The vehicle collides with a tree. That's one impact. Your body inside that vehicle now collides with the steering wheel or the dashboard or the front seat if you're in the back seat. That's a second collision. Okay? And then third, your organs within your body, as you hit the tree, your chest hits the steering wheel. Now your lungs, heart, vessels, aorta, all slams to your rib cage. 3 collisions all taking place. Okay? So keep that in mind. Same thing on falls. You fall from a distance. Body hits the ground. Your feet hit first. Where's all that energy absorbed? What are your organs doing as they're meeting that sudden deceleration? So think about those multiple impacts in any type of collision, but mainly in a vehicle collision. And we'll talk about the different types of vehicle collisions and what kind of injuries you may expect. Okay, this is just what I was talking about. Auto hits a tree, body hits the steering wheel. How can you tell if you had significant impact on the steering wheel?
It's deformed.
Okay, deformity of the steering wheel. You may have a steering wheel tattoo across your chest.
Chrysler.
Huh? Yeah, Chrysler, Ford. If you can read Ford across their chest, that might have been pretty significant. Majority of all cars nowadays have airbags. Okay, so the airbag is going to deploy and do its job, hopefully. Okay, get in the habit of look in that vehicle, lift that airbag, and see is it deformed. Okay, the old days, if you had a deformity to the windshield or a cracked windshield, it was always because the patient struck the windshield. Nowadays, a lot of those airbags that deploy, they're going to break the windshield. Okay, that doesn't mean that the body didn't hit it also. But look for, if you're looking at the windshield for a collision of the body hitting it, look for, is there blood on the inside of the windshield? Is there hair in the inside of the windshield? Is there tissue stuck to the inside of the windshield? Is it a face plant, a nice oval shaped deformity? That wasn't the airbag, that was a face or a forehead or something else. When you're picking long hairs out of the windshield, you can tell that was the patient that broke that windshield, not the airbags. But in looking at the steering wheel, get in the habit of lifting that airbag off and look at the steering wheel. Is it deformed? Is the top half of the steering wheel bent down? Is the bottom half of the steering wheel bent? Was the patient holding it and bent it? So now you can think about what type of force was transferred to that patient. Okay. Sometimes you may not see the vehicle. Ask fire if they did the extrication. They may have had the person out of the vehicle before you got there, and you get so tumbled into patient care. I try to do it if we landed at the scene of a motor vehicle accident. If the motor vehicle is there, close by, and I can walk past it on my way to the ambulance, I'm going to take a quick second to look at the vehicle. I'm going to look inside of it. I want to look at what did that patient compartment look like. Okay, is there deformity to the wheels? Deformity to the steering, to the windshield? Is the driver's side door crushed a foot into the, and I look at the driver's seat and it's crushed down this wide. You look at your patient there with this wide. Okay, a lot of trauma was transferred to that patient. Lastly, the organs colliding with the inside of the body itself. What factor is the most significant determines the amount of kinetic energy involved in a vehicle collision? Is it the center of gravity of the vehicle? Is it the mass of the vehicle the patient's in? If he's driving a Corvette or he's driving an 18-wheeler, is that important? It's not the most important. The mass of the vehicle that strikes the patient's vehicle, is that important? Or the combined speed of the 2 vehicles?
Delta.
Okay, delta. Why? Because of velocities. We're more concerned with velocity. Now we have a combined velocity of 2 vehicles striking each other. Okay? So, definitely that one. MOI provides a suspicion of injury, but not an accurate indicator. Keep that in mind, guys. Okay? MOI is going to make you think about what kind of injuries do I need to look for. what could have happened to that patient based on what I know of as an MOI, all right? You must assess that patient for injuries, for their patterns, okay? I've had so many times, and I just wanna look at the guys and say, guys, really can't do this. You look at a patient, man, he looks fantastic, but he was in a head-on collision, or he was in a rollover, or he was in whatever, and the car is torn to crap. Patient's seatbelts work, hand of God was on him the whole time through, and he doesn't have but a scratch or a bruise. Says, man, my neck's a little sore, or whatever, but he doesn't have anything. And they're saying, guys, we called the helicopter because the car is tore up. We're not flying the car to the trauma center. Okay, that car tore up should give you a high index of suspicion. Okay, but now put that on the back shelf and focus on the patient. What do I see in my primary survey? What do I see on my secondary survey? Is there anything that makes this a rapid trauma patient? Are there any life threats? Okay, and you'll get to the point, maybe not now in your career, but 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road, you're gonna go, man, I just got a hunch that there's something going on in here. A lot of times you're gonna be right, okay? But remember that your MOI just gives you an index of suspicion. It doesn't, everybody goes to the level of trauma center if they were in a head-on collision. Not necessarily, okay?
I'd send them ahead.
Huh?
Make sure to send them ahead. A lot of that stuff on day one.
And there's nothing wrong with over triaging a patient. I think the American College of Surgeons says that probably 35 to 40% of patients are over triaged, and that's there's nothing wrong with that. Okay.
Rather be over.
Yeah, you'd rather be over than sir, you sure you don't want to go to the hospital? You had a pretty significant car. No, I'm okay. And they go home and they bleed to death from a spleen injury, and they wake up dead tomorrow morning. Okay, because again, you've got those more subtle injuries that develop over time. You got a small level 1, grade 1 liver lac, and it's not showing any big outward signs down, but 2, 3, 4 hours later, he's getting real pale and cool and clammy, diaphoretic, blood pressure's dropping, he's got this big distended abdomen. Well, those are things that developed over time. And again, because of your index of suspicion, and knowing that I looked at that steering wheel and the bottom was deformed, and he had a seatbelt mark across here with a significant injury or a significant seatbelt pattern, I'm thinking, what's inside of there? Okay, lacerated liver or the spleen or something like that. Okay, so MOI is important to consider, but it's not your end all be all. Okay. Keep a high index of suspicion in vehicle collisions if, again, in your MOI, there was another vehicle occupant, there was a fatality. Okay, if forces were great enough to kill the passenger, the driver had suffered those same type of significant forces. If there's someone in the back seat, again, anybody in that patient compartment, keep that in mind. If there was a fatality in that vehicle, there was a lot of force applied to that patient compartment. And the altered mental status, intrusion of over 12 inches to the occupant site, okay, meaning the passenger compartment, front seat, back seat, was a door jammed in, is the dashboard jammed in. The majority of that you're going to see on lateral impacts, when a vehicle's T-boned or something, okay. If there's greater than 12 foot of intrusion in that passenger space, that's a significant MOI. Does that mean that's a level 1 trauma patient? Not necessarily.
Just to say, you said 12 foot.
That's a 12 foot. Yeah, 12 feet.
Say that car
All right,
is cleaved in half.
12 inch. Glad you were listening. That was a test. 1 foot, 12 inches.
I just thought you were talking about a guy down here. I didn't realize. 12 feet.
Yeah, if there's a 12 inch or 1 foot intrusion into the occupant size, passenger compartment, that's significant. If you're ejected from the motor vehicle, are your chances of injury greater?
Pretty high.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, because now again, think about, remember those 3 impacts that we talked about before? Now think about impacts number 4, 5, and 6 as you're hit and you roll and you roll and you hit a tree and you might be hit by another vehicle.
Not to mention how your
See
body
patients be
to get
ejected
out and over the vehicle.
See patients be ejected on roadways and then struck by another vehicle. Okay, you talk about your day going from bad to worse. Yeah, it'll happen. Okay. Vehicle telemetry data consistent with a high risk of injury. Okay. In all the years I've been doing this, I've never really been able to say, okay, The only thing you really know on telemetry is, or based on the vehicle, did the airbags deploy? Yeah, that's significant, okay? I've never got on the phone with OnStar and say, yeah, how fast was the car driving when he struck that tree? Never had OnStar call me and give me that information, okay? But does it help later on in the police investigation? Yeah, you know, they may find out that information for you later, but it's probably not gonna be something
Say at
that's
that point,
readily
you've already
available to
treated-
you at that, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. In my primary survey, I'm gonna notify OnStar and, upload the,
Can wait 5 minutes while we get this information.
downloading now. Types of impacts in motor vehicle trauma, right? You see the percentage there, 32% are frontal impact, head-on collisions, only 9% rear-ended. Lateral impacts, T-bones, about 15%. Okay, always keep in mind T-bone injuries on that patient. Were they T-boned on the patient's side or on the non-patient side? If the driver, a single driver of a vehicle is T-boned on the passenger side, not as significant as if he was T-boned in his door, okay? But again, think about too, if you look at that passenger door and there's 6 inches of intrusion or there's 20 inches of intrusion, how much impact, how much force struck that vehicle, okay? So keep those in mind. Rotational injuries or rotational impacts, 38% where a vehicle is hit and either spins or rolls, okay? Rotational being either a car's hit and just spun around on the roadway, or it's hit and rolls. Does it roll side over side? Does it roll end over end? Okay? End over ends are significant impacts, okay? Because it takes a lot of velocity and a lot of forces to make that car go end over end several times. Think about too, when you find a vehicle, how is the vehicle found? Is it upright? Is it on its roof? Is it on a side, passenger side, driver's side? Those are all gonna make challenges for extrication, patient access, patient management. Can we manage the patient while they're still entrapped in a vehicle?
Yes.
A lot of times you can, okay? If you're trained, if you have the appropriate safety equipment, you can get inside the vehicle with them, okay? Start IVs, start them on oxygen.
Ask permission before you do C-spine, I remember. I'm sorry.
Alright, frontal impacts, occupants traveling at the same speed of the vehicle. Vehicle strikes a tree. Okay. Look in there too, see, okay, so you've got significant impact to the damage to the front of the vehicle. Is there damage to the patient compartment, the passenger compartment of the vehicle?
Can't see, but the
Can't-
windshield.
You
Doesn't
can't
look
see
like
it from
it.
there, okay? But again, knowing that that's the impact site, look at the passenger compartment and see, was there deformity there? Was there, you know, did the airbags deploy as they're supposed to?
Windshield's intact.
You know, the windshield looks intact. Were they wearing a seatbelt? Were they not wearing a seatbelt? Okay.
Ooh.
Frontal collision, as the occupant strikes the vehicle, okay, the occupant was moving at the same speed of the vehicle before the vehicle came to that abrupt stop. The occupant kept moving at 45 miles an hour until they hit that blunt object known as the steering wheel, okay?
Not wearing a seatbelt.
What kind of injury patterns are you gonna look for? In a frontal impact, you have what's called the up and over. Your body goes up and over the steering wheel. Look for injuries to the abdomen, chest, face, okay? Head and neck injuries. Did that face, head, or neck, face and head, strike the windshield?
Or
Okay.
the dashboard.
Did they hit the dashboard? You'll get a lot of times neck trauma or chest trauma as it hits the top of the steering wheel, okay? Or if they were short, you know, little old Granny's driving like this and she hits that steering wheel across the neck, her face, okay? So those are things to think about. What was the patient's path once they struck an object? All right, here's what you're looking for. Up and over. Look at the face and head. Look at neck injuries, significant neck injuries. Again, if you struck that windshield with your face and you either broke it or didn't break the windshield, what's your head gonna naturally do? Come back. Significant trauma to the neck? Absolutely. Okay. Chest trauma, blunt chest trauma. Look for seatbelt marks. look for steering wheel deformities, okay? As you're assessing that patient, look, listen, and feel. Do we got equal chest rise and fall? Do we have crepitus? Okay, any deformities, any flail segment, okay? What's the definition of a flail segment?
Two or more ribs are inconsistent with the rest of the rise and fall of the chest.
Two or more ribs broken in two or more places is gonna give you that inadequate chest rise and fall. Or your asymmetrical chest rise and fall. Form steering wheel indicates possible chest or abdominal injury. Again, look at it. This car doesn't have an airbag. It looks like an oldie but a goldie there, okay? Look at the deformity to the bottom of that steering wheel.
Where's the front seat?
Front seat looks like it was removed, okay? He might have been, 8 feet tall and he rides from the back seat. He was riding dirty there. Yeah, that. You also gotta think about too, joking about that is, how many times do you're driving down the road, you look at the guy next to you, he's super
Laid
cool,
back.
he's laid back
That's
there.
how
he's
I
got his
drive.
seat- Well, I don't wanna pick on you, I wasn't gonna call names.
It's all right, I drive like an old lady. He called me out a few minutes ago.
But if you've got that seat reclined back and you're low, think about where your injury patterns are. Are you more likely to do the up and over pattern?
No, you're gonna go.
You're gonna be down and under probably, okay?
It also
So,
looked like he had an angle on that one.
what?
The steering wheel was like that,
Yeah. And look at that too, is the steering wheel, uniformly bent to the bottom, is it one side more than the other? Okay. They talk about the paper bag syndrome, okay? Think about, your lungs as a paper bag. If you, in an impact or you get that fear, oh my God, I'm gonna hit a tree, what do? Hold your breath. And now as your body impacts that steering wheel, you've got your lungs fully inflated, you're holding your breath, so you've got no escape there. What's the likelihood of puncturing or rupturing a lung?
High.
Okay, is that a significant injury? Yeah. Even if you only puncture or rupture one lung, significant injury.
You got
Okay.
two.
You got two.
That's not very good.
My God, don't bust them both, but still, one significant lung injury is a significant injury, okay? So keep that in mind too, those are things that can happen in a collision. Alright, frontal impacts are down and under, okay? This is the guy who was riding low. Think about injuries to the knees, femurs, hips, acetabulum, upper part of the femur where it connects to the pelvis and hip, and spinal injuries, okay? This is too where you find, look at the knees striking the dashboard, your thighs, if you think about your knees striking the dashboard, where's all that trauma related to? Where's it all going to dissipate? In your femur, okay? Can you break that femur? Absolutely. Can that femur come back and be dislocated? Absolutely. We landed at the scene of an accident of a guy that rear-ended a 18-wheeler that was stopped on the interstate. And he was driving an old type utility van. And when they extricated him, they rolled the dash off. We were standing next to him as he was in the vehicle on the driver's side. And both of his legs were crossed like this. And both of his femurs were back here. They both came completely dislocated from his pelvis. They were both broken and pushed all the way back through.
Conscious?
Okay, yeah. He said words that no one should ever hear, okay? He was in a lot of pain. But again, that was from striking the steering wheel and or the dashboard, because in that old van, the dashboard was very close.
Yeah.
And he was one of those that was riding up real close to it, okay? You see it all the time as you're driving down to the beach. How many of you are guilty, and I'm not gonna pick on the ladies, but you see ladies do it a lot. You're riding along in the passenger seat with their feet up on the dashboard.
I saw that.
Isn't that cool? That's uncomfortable.
Never,
You're
not
riding
on
on the beach.
photo.
I've seen a guy driving with his left foot hanging out the window, and I'm saying, you're an idiot. You're an idiot. Because you could bump into a tree or a car in front of you at 10 miles an hour. And that accident would not have damaged you whatsoever. But when that airbag came out and shot your hips or your legs back up behind your ears, now you've got pelvic trauma, femur trauma.
Probably neutered.
You,
For the good of humanity.
yeah.
So, again, you'll see that, you know, I'm
You
sure
gave
you've all
in.
seen it before.
You gave in.
Be sure that you're that guy that tells your significant other, or your son, or your daughter, hey, get your feet off the dash, okay? Because that's what's gonna happen to
I
us.
do that because people belong on the bench. I didn't even think about this.
All right. Something else to think about too, it doesn't talk about facial trauma here in your down and unders, but I tell you, plenty of times you've seen it. And if you get to the scene of the vehicle and you still see the patient while they're in the vehicle, where are they found? Are they crumpled up on the driver's floorboard? Okay, so in accidents like that, I've seen a lot of times where they get neck and facial trauma hitting the bottom of the steering wheel. I've had at least 2 or 3 times where a tracheobronchial tear from them striking their neck and their trachea and bronchium becoming torn apart.
Wow.
Okay?
It's not really mentioned here, but wouldn't that force especially carry through the legs to the pelvis? Or is that always enough to just dislocate
Like
and
this?
push past?
Yeah, you can either break the femurs, or the femurs can stay intact and just completely come out of socket. Most of the time, if they come out of socket too, they're also gonna have some type of pelvic fracture.
Yeah, okay.
You know, either in the symphysis pubis or up in the tops of the,
Yeah.
of the pubic rami. Okay? So yeah, you're just looking at to see that based on that injury pattern or that impact pattern, what kind of injuries could have happened. Okay? So are you gonna do a very thorough lower extremity assessment on this patient? Absolutely. Look at it, look for swelling, look for deformity, feel, you know, is it tight? Is there any crepitus noted? Do they grimace in pain? Okay? That femur may not be broken, but it took a significant impact.
I know you gotta get some compression devices ready for that, but I wouldn't even know where to begin on removing that patient from the vehicle.
Jump off the door.
Every extrication's a
Well,
challenge.
I mean, of course, like getting the door out, but just maneuvering them without causing further damage.
I
That's
mean,
remove the
regardless
damage.
of how you move them, it's gonna hurt.
I'm not worried about it hurting them, I'm worried about further injury, me making them
Well,
worse.
and
Not
again,
that it
you've gotta
hurts
do
them. I don't
it-
get pain medication here. What do you think I am?
A drug dealer.
There's plenty of times where we you know, that's the good part of having ALS, where you have the ability to medicate patients as they're gonna be extricated. It makes a huge difference, okay? But again, you also gotta look at that fine line too. You don't wanna over-medicate them to now, oh shit, now we're gonna be bagging him because his respiratory drive, we just knocked it out or diminished it. He was breathing 32 times a minute, now he's breathing 6. He's chilled, but he's gonna be dead soon if we don't do something else. Now we have an airway problem that we didn't have before. Okay, so you gotta do a kind of a balancing act there. All right, this just shows some other injuries associated with frontal impact. All right, we talked about the hips or pelvis, dislocations of the hips or knees. Most cars you'll see nowadays, they don't have just a lap belt or lap and shoulder, okay? But do people take that shoulder belt and put it behind them where they're only using a lap belt? Yes. In the back seats of a lot of cars, you may only have a lap belt, okay? If they're worn improperly, so think about that lap belt restraining your pelvis to the seat, but everything else around it sandwiches around it, okay? No seat belt, all bets are off. You can have all kinds of trauma and impact from that, okay? Rear end collisions, think about head and neck in the initial flip back, okay? If your seatbelt's properly adjusted, you should be able to rest your head on the back of the seatbelt, where that's gonna absorb some of that impact, okay? Again, it all gonna depend on how that,
Or make it worse if people had it at like the ambulance or something, hey.
just enough to give you a fulcrum to pivot over, okay? And then they talk about that, a lot of times it's gonna follow either the up and over or down and under pathway. You have to look at, again, how the patient's found, okay? A lot of times too, you're gonna get on the scene of the accident, the patient may be out of the vehicle already, maybe out walking around, okay?
I thought it meant like unintentionally out of the vehicle, like.
Well, no.
Ejected.
Unintentionally, they may not be walking around when you get there if they were unintentionally removed from the vehicle. But a lot of times you'll get in, you know, either the patient got themselves out, or they were helped out by bystanders, they were trying to be good Samaritans, and they just yanked them out. So in those situations, try to get an idea from either the patient or from first responders or witnesses at the scene is, how was he in the vehicle when he, you know, prior to him coming out? Where was he found? Oh, he was the driver of the vehicle, but we found him in the back seat. Is it rotational? Did the vehicle roll over? Okay. that used to be the rear end of a vehicle. Is that significant intrusion to the vehicle itself and the patient compartment? Absolutely, there is no back seat anymore, all right?
And
So,
coupe.
significant. Does the driver, sustain some significant force from behind? Absolutely.
I wonder how much of that car is actually in the front seat.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of front seat.
No, bro, that's a coupe.
All right.
I'd say like how much is pushed in the front.
Injury patterns of a driver not wearing a seatbelt, again, you can look through these, look at the, initial movement backwards causing that neck injury, and then as he comes forward, he can impact the steering wheel or dashboard. All right. Lateral impacts, maybe injuries to the head, neck, chest, abdomen, pelvis, extremities, all right? Where was the vehicle struck? Was it struck on the patient's side or on the non-patient's side? You know, was there one person in the vehicle? Was there four people in the vehicle? Okay, so think about where the impact of that vehicle took place, and was your patient on that same side? Okay, was the intrusion to that passenger compartment significant? Okay, so not only are they struck with that force, but now think about all that bent metal that came in and took that passenger seat that was this wide, that's now this wide, and your patient's still sitting there on the passenger side. Seen it plenty times where they're crunched up in there, and they may be crunched in there for minutes to hours during extrication.
Because it's dangerous to uncompress a patient.
Well, not only it's dangerous, it's hard to do. It's not, you know, all vehicle accidents don't happen on a flat, level parking lot, roadway, where you can pull the fire truck and you can use your tools and all, you know. I've seen vehicles down an embankment, 10, 20 feet down an embankment, they're crushed up against a tree, wrapped around that tree, and your patient is in the passenger side. So now not only do you have to worry about things like the darkness of the night, the fact that you're 20 feet down almost 45 to 60 degree embankment, the car is wrapped around a tree on the passenger side, and your patient happens to be sitting in that passenger seat. You know, how can you physically get tools, you know, the jaws or cutters or spreaders down there to work in that environment? You can't. When you take two tow trucks and you put cables and you haul the car up out of the ditch onto the roadway to now you can start cutting, how much pain do you think that patient was in? Significant. And there was a medic in the back of the car holding C-spine and talking to her the whole time. Okay, that extrication took over 60 minutes. Okay, so think about where the patient is and what, you know, what kind of impacts were they affected on. You see a lot of side airbags now. Okay, they will limit some of the injuries, or designed to at least. Gives you an idea of the type of injuries or impact, even with airbags. You know, if the airbags are going to hit lower, does your head and neck whip over? Can they hit the B post of the vehicle? Do they hit a closed window? You know, was the driver's window up, head struck it and busted the window? Okay, so a lot of trauma can be referred to that patient there. In a rollover rotational crash, all bets are off. You know what? You just roll the dice and you never know what you're going to get. Okay, that's basically what you do when you roll that car. All right. Injury patterns are much less predictable because that patient can be all over the vehicle, especially if it was an unrestrained patient. Okay. The driver ends up in the back seat. The front seat passenger ends up in the back seat. The front seat passenger ends up under the, you know, on top of the driver. All bets are off there what kind of pattern of injuries can occur. Okay.
This is also the one where it's much more severe with objects within the car that are loose and flying around.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We drove back from Pigeon Forge a few days after Christmas, and had me, my wife, my 11-year-old, and her parents. And her dad's like, "Oh, put this suitcase here, put this here. I got these 3 cases of Coke," and he's putting them all in the back, and I'm like, no, all I can see is all these missiles and projectiles flying if we were to have an accident. And, you know, he's wondering why I'm putting this, and I'm like, no, I can't, you know, let's put soft. You know, you got my 11-year-old in the back 3rd row seat with luggage packed all around him. I'm like, okay, I want pillows around him. I don't want 3 cases of Coke around, you know, as his armrest, because those are all, like you said, in an accident, every single thing in there becomes a projectile.
Ain't no one scared of a pillow.
Huh?
I said ain't no one scared of a pillow.
No, it's absolutely not. Pillow's your best friend. Except when they stuck a six-pack of Coke in the pillowcase.
Who did that?
My father-in-law. He meant well. He's taking advantage of every inch of space on there. All right. Rotational impacts, again, think of a vehicle that's struck. As it's spinning, what else does it hit? Does it hit other vehicles? Does it hit objects in the roadway? Trees, signs, things like that. So look around too at the scene to see what other damage is there. You know, if you see this vehicle sitting in the middle of the road, we're like, oh, okay, no big deal. But you look and there's a telephone pole bent over, there's 3 signposts or a guardrail that's ripped apart. So you see, oh, okay, well in that spinning pattern, that vehicle struck the guardrail and completely tore it apart. Okay. Rollover accidents, again, where do you find a patient? Okay. A lot of things have to take place during an extrication. Proper stabilization of the vehicle. Can you just go climb in the back seat of this vehicle when you get there? No, because again, the vehicle may be unsteady. Okay. As it moves, are we causing more damage to the patient? Are you putting yourself at risk when you get in the back of that vehicle if it's not properly stabilized? Absolutely. Okay. So don't run in there and be Rescue Randy and be the hero and injure yourself or further injure your patient. Okay. This just gives you kind of an indicator of what can happen to the body in a rollover. Okay.
What horrible little cars you drive around.
Smart car.
Yeah, right.
Ain't nothing smart about those cars. I looked at the infamous thing, good gosh, that's a disaster waiting to happen.
That's just horrible.
I saw a video where this girl kept putting her feet on the dash, and her boyfriend kept telling her to stop. So he slammed on the brakes, and then she just went.
She went
butt
in
first
between the seat.
right into
Yeah, I think I remember
right
seeing
into the
that.
front one. Had legs up here and everything. I was just like, man, that's on you, dog.
The Region 7 EMA director just sent me a picture. He's, happens to be my son. He works with fire. He got in the fire department last year. So he just sent me a picture of my son in full PPE, and Daryl's like, don't worry, I got him. He's fully protected. I'm like, I don't even want to know what he's doing.
Or why. All right, vehicle pedestrian collisions. We've been harping on motor vehicle collisions. What about in pedestrian collision, pedestrian versus auto? So that's significant impact?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
depending on the speed.
Okay, absolutely. How significant is it? Again, vehicle speed, velocity, velocity, velocity. Okay. What part of the body was hit? Are we hitting lower extremities? Are we hitting waist-wise? Are we hitting upper body-wise? What determines that?
The size of the vehicle or type
Size of the vehicle or size of the patient?
Mhm.
Okay. Small children, 4, 5, 6 years old, run on the roadway versus an adult struck by a vehicle. Okay. How far was the pedestrian thrown when they were hit? Were they hit and thrown, or were they hit and they went over the hood and into the vehicle? Okay. So what kind of impacts? What body part first struck the ground, or what body part struck the vehicle once they were hit? Again, did they come up and over the dashboard and then hit the ground, or did you find them still laying across the hood of the vehicle? Okay. Injury patterns are different in children and adults, and we'll talk a little bit about that based on their size. Inside a vehicle, this is restraints can cause hidden injuries. You're always going to get that little old man that says, "Man, I don't wear a seatbelt. I had a friend one time that if he was wearing a seatbelt, it would have killed him." Well, you know what? Once in 100, 200, 300,000 times, that seatbelt may have killed you, but the other 299,000 times it saved your life. So don't go on that. You know, and that's what it tells you here. The benefit of the seatbelt definitely outweighs the risk of not wearing one. Okay. Look at lap belts and shoulder belts if they're positioned properly.
Airbags are only good for the initial.
Yeah, airbag is only going to initiate, be that initial impact. It's going to inflate quickly and deflate. Okay. If that vehicle is struck again or it's rolling, the airbag only works well one time. Okay. As that airbag inflates rapidly and then it deflates, all that gas in there is venting. It's always going to leave a real smoky residue. Okay. So many times you're going to get called to respond to motor vehicle collision, vehicle's on fire. I can count less than, on one hand, how many times the vehicle is really on fire. It's bystanders see all the smoke in the vehicle, and they go, hey, I just saw a car accident on Veterans Parkway, and the car's on fire. It's not, it's the airbag that's deflating and letting all that smoke out, okay? Not saying that they don't catch fire, but the majority of the time, it's just somebody seeing that airbag flow. Look at your seatbelt pattern there. A lot of times, if you find a person outside of the vehicle, or, you may get these people where their story to the police might be a little different from what you're seeing. Oh no, officer, I wasn't driving the car, but you got that seatbelt pattern that runs from your left shoulder to your right hip. Are you the driver or are you the passenger? You the driver, okay? And you ain't gonna fool the cop either by telling me not. But you as the EMS provider now wants to know, where was that patient in the vehicle? Because the steering wheel's all bent up, the driver's door's tore up, and this guy's swearing that he was the passenger. Okay, so again, look at things like this. Look at that seatbelt pattern. It's going to give you an indicator of where was he in the vehicle. Okay, passenger's going to have that seatbelt pattern from the right shoulder to the left hip. Okay, as it comes across him. You got to be a detective in a lot of this. Okay, here's a lap belt. Okay, look at those injuries. Okay, that's the one I was telling you earlier, the guy who decides he wants to go home because he doesn't hurt at all, but now he's got a pretty significant abdominal injury, okay, because of that seatbelt. That seatbelt can make a pretty significant damage like that. Think about what it did to the underlying organs, okay? All right. Talk about the different patterns caused by the seatbelt injuries. Motorcycle collisions. Wearing a helmet is going to reduce your likelihood of a head injury. Okay, are all helmets the same? Okay, the majority of the time you see people riding motorcycles, do they have what you would think of as a good, safe helmet on?
They got those little.
Depends on what bike they drive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the guys that ride a Harley, what do they wear?
The little turtle
the
shell.
little turtle shell. Okay. And it doesn't fit well. It might be sitting back here, it might be sitting there. It's more so they can check the letter of the law that I have a helmet on. You might as well be wearing, a skull cap or a yarmulke for that matter, because all it's doing is covering that little part of the top of your head. Okay. Now, the guy who's riding a crotch rocket, do they wear those little turtle?
No, they wear the full face.
They're usually full face, much more significant. Okay. So, my opinion, a good helmet in a significant motorcycle crash, the only difference it gives you is whether you're going to have an open casket or a closed casket funeral.
Yeah.
Okay? Is your mama going to be able to look at your face? If you had a full face helmet on, yes, she can. Okay? That's my opinion on motorcycles and helmets. I'm not a big motorcycle fan. I got wiped out on as a teenager, never got on one again. And if you ever see me on one, there's a problem. But the motorcycle helmets definitely make a difference. Look at the helmet. Look at what kind of damage to the helmet. If it's just got some abrasions to it, okay, it did its job, and it probably cushioned the head like it was supposed to. Now, if you look at that helmet and it's cracked and splintered, or the face piece is broken, that was a lot of trauma to the front of that face if it broke that helmet.
Or it was just enough force to move it from
Or are they ripped back off? Was it worn properly? Okay. A lot of times, bring that helmet to the receiving facility too. Okay, the receiving facility is going to want to look at that helmet. We had over a couple of years, Grady was doing a helmet study on motorcycle crashes, and we took the helmets to them all the time. They always want to take pictures. Did all kinds of studies on what kind of damage and forces to the helmet and how that related to the patient's injuries as they were found. All right, in motorcycle collisions, you may have head-on or angular. Okay, head-on, he strikes an object, goes over the vehicle, or they struck from a side, from an angle. Right? Look at the patient that lays the bike down. Okay, they lay the bike down, they're trying to avoid that impact with an object, whether it be a car, whether it be a guardrail. They may not strike that other vehicle, but what kind of injuries can they have now from laying their bike down?
Lacerations.
Okay. look at what side they laid it down, okay? A lot of times, it's just a lot of road rash, okay? You may have some fractures, underlying fractures and things like that too. But, you know, as we go through, this afternoon, we talk about trauma and abrasions. Oh, abrasions won't kill you, but you know what? When you got an abrasion from your heel to the top of your shoulder and the entire side of your body looks like you went through a cheese grater, that's a significant abrasion, okay? So you've got a lot of bleeding, a lot of pain, a lot of chance for infection too. And think about too is, what kind of stuff got into that wound?
Yeah.
Asphalt, dirt, mud, pine straw. I saw a motorcycle crash and they went underneath a barbed wire fence. And as they went under the barbed wire fence, it caught the back of their, right below their knees as they slid under the fence, and it just filleted them all the way back. Well, as we look back at this avulsion injury that went from the knees all the way to the top of her butt, it was like a fillet. As we looked at it, full of pine straw, full of grass and dirt. How many hours you spend in the hospital just them debriding that injury?
Not to mention that barbed wire
That's
probably wasn't new.
It was sterile.
No,
But
but like
heat
the
make
rusted,
anything sterile.
nasty,
Yeah.
corroded stuff you get out on fences out here.
There's a picture of a motorcycle crash. Look at the injuries, you know, look at the damage to the vehicle, look at how far the patient was found from the motorcycle.
Definitely a crash racket.
Yeah.
I see a lot of people on Harleys run.
He probably had him a good helmet, right?
Yeah.
Something to be said for him, okay.
There we go.
This is the guy who was wearing the little turtle dome, okay, because if he had that good full face helmet, it probably would have protected that quite a bit more. All right. Soft tissue injuries to the face, what kind of patient management concerns would you have with this guy?
Well, there's gonna be one altered mental status, two severe bleeding. If it's soft tissue around the nose or the mouth, it could include the airways.
What's our number one thing in our primary survey?
Airway.
Airway. Can this guy have a lot of airway issues? Yeah. If he's got any bleeding in the mouth or nose, and all that's going in there causing airway obstruction, okay? If it's not causing airway obstruction at the time, think about him too. He's laying out, you got him on that backboard, and he's sitting there swallowing that blood. How long is it gonna take for that blood to irritate your stomach? To where they start throwing up? It's gonna happen pretty quick. It will probably happen in the back of your ambulance. Vomiting always happens in the back of your truck. To me, vomiting always happens on short finals of the receiving facility. They don't vomit at all during the flight, but in those last 2-3 minutes where they vomiting happens, okay? So again, that's just swallowing blood. Huh?
It's a Fight Club taught me you can have a pint.
Anybody need to take a break?
Done.
10:30? Everybody? Good? I don't want to lose anybody.
He's gotten the good stuff.
Alright. Vehicle collisions continue here with all-terrain vehicles. They're unstable, easily tipped over, okay? Nowadays, all your all-terrain, they don't even sell three-wheel all-terrain vehicles anymore. When I was growing up as a kid, the ATV was it. The three-wheeler ATV, that was a rollover machine. It was designed to roll over. If you turn the steering wheel just a little bit too much, one way or the other, the way it was designed, it was gonna roll over. And I had a buddy of mine, he rolled that thing so many times, I don't know how he survived. Okay, they don't even make them anymore. Now they do all four-wheeler ATVs.
Yeah.
Does that completely do away with any rollovers? No, absolutely not, because they're gonna take it places they don't need to take it. You know, if the hill is high enough, they think they can do it. Ditch is deep enough, they think they can make it. It's still gonna have a lot of rollovers. One of the biggest things you'll see, and if you haven't, you will in the future, when you see kids, teenagers, young adults, old adults riding ATVs, what do they not have on?
Protective gear.
Helmet.
Okay.
Majority of them don't have helmets. Majority of them don't have any type of protective gear. You know, you see a guy riding an ATV with flip-flops on, shorts, and a t-shirt.
T-shirt's optional.
Straight up.
The t-shirt's optional, if, you know, it's a white beater t-shirt, it's a tank top. But, yeah, that's how the majority of them, and I'll go drive around all the time and I look and I see this, you know, 12-year-old kid just flying along there on this four-wheeler with no helmet on.
He had a helmet, it was just a beer helmet.
It doesn't. And,
that,
you know,
that Budweiser box doesn't hold on like they used to.
when anybody is riding an ATV at night, in the dark, 99% of the time, they're drunk, okay? Because that's not the ideal time to ride an ATV, but they do it. And this is a true story. We picked up a guy out in Talbot County one time, and he was an ATV accident, probably 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, which again, why are you riding an ATV at 2 o'clock in the morning if you're not drunk? So he had one, if not bilateral femur fractures, and we flew him to Columbus, and as we're talking to the guy, we're getting his history and stuff, he says, he tells us that there was someone else on the back of the ATV with him. Well, EMS didn't say anything about the other person. So this guy tells us that, and this guy's in his 50s, so he's not a young kid. You would think have a little bit more sense. He was drunk as a skunk. He crashed and he couldn't go for help. So his passenger walked to get help. His passenger was his mama. Remember how old he was? He was
You just
50.
got outdid by your 70-year-old mama.
Oh, wait, what?
My passenger was
Minimum.
50. His mama went to get help. She was about 70 years old. She was drunk on the back of the ATV
She's
with her
definitely
son.
kidding.
Yeah. So again, you can't
What
make
state
this
was
up.
this again?
What state is a county over?
I was about to say,
Wait,
we're
where's
right
Florida?
next to Florida, man, the
Oh, okay,
crazies
good.
here.
All right, good, that's basically what I was.
No, it's the other direction, it's towards Macon.
Crap.
So again, very unstable vehicles, all right, injury patterns, similar to motorcycles, but again, you think about impacts up and over the steering wheel, handlebars will catch, there you go, there he is. No, he's too young, but see, Cletus has got pants on and shoes, okay, so he's way above your typical ATV rider.
That's wintertime.
Yeah, those are not Crocs.
But see, he's got a sleeveless shirt.
It's still wintertime.
Other mechanism, falls. Severity of the trauma depends on, again, the distance fall, and again, the fall doesn't kill you, it's the stop at the end. The surface that they landed on. If you fell off the rooftop of a house while you were hanging Christmas lights, did you land in the grass in the yard, or did you land on the asphalt driveway? Big difference? Yes. Okay. What body part impacted first? Did you land on your head? Did you land on your feet? Did you land on your side or an outstretched arm? Okay. Also think about too, during the fall is, did you impact anything else on the way down? If you fell out of a tree and you hit every branch on the way down, you fell out of a tree and you hit the fence before you hit the ground. Okay, so think about other impacts that could have taken place. And that, you're gonna think about that as you assess the scene. You know, this kid that fell out of the tree, well, the tree was right against the privacy fence between him and the neighbor's yard. You know, think about, did he hit that fence on the way down? Did he end up in their yard or the neighbor's yard? Both. Okay, and then the dog got him next door, so that's another story. All right, a severe fall in an adult is considered anything greater than 20 feet. All right, in a child, anything greater than 10 feet or 2 to 3 times the height of the child. Okay, in falls too, keep in mind, especially with children, does the story match what you're seeing? Okay, you know, when they tell you that an 8-month-old was jumping on the bed and fell, not necessarily. Okay? Most 8 months old don't jump on the bed. Yeah. Or he fell down the stairs while he was walking. Was he walking? Maybe. Okay. Feet first falls, think of injuries to the lower extremities, injuries to the spine, compression type injuries as you land on those heels. Okay. All that force is going to be absorbed by your lower legs, your femurs, your hips, your spine. You have all types of compression injuries there. Internal organs can be injured as they, again, compress down, having that impact within the body. Wrist and elbow injuries may occur. Why? Because as we fall either forward or backwards, our natural tendency is going to be to outstretch those arms to break your fall. So you'll see injuries to the wrist, forearms, upper arms, shoulders. Okay, so look for things like that. Always ask a fall patient, how did you fall? How did you strike the ground? What body part hit the ground first? Did you fall on your butt? Did you fall on your feet? Did you fall on your head? Okay, if it's not obvious. Okay. There's a good depiction there of the forces. Going to be referred to your spine and your lower extremities. Right. Head first falls, think about upper extremity injuries, again, head and neck injuries, chest, spine, pelvis, and all of that, again, it's just going to be, we're going to flip it upside down. And all those forces that first were impacted on your heels, now impacted on the head. And we're just going to turn it upside down and still have all that compression force. Right. Penetrating injuries, this is the fun stuff. The gun and knife club, right? This is what we all get into EMS for, right? I hate them. Kinetic energy predicts the amount of damage. It was a low, a medium, or high velocity object. Okay. This gives you an indicator here of injury pattern based on the velocity of an object. Okay. If you look at the top one there, you got a small entrance wound on the front of the thigh. All right. High or medium velocity. Look at the cavitation. Okay, cavitation is, look at that cavity that it makes as that bullet or projectile goes through the body. A lower velocity projectile is going to have a smaller cavity, right? As opposed to the lower injury there by high velocity. Look at again, you got your entry wound, but because of the velocity of that bullet, the cavity is much bigger. Okay, in injuries like this to the thigh, did they get lucky enough to miss the bone, or did it hit the bone? Okay, depending on that velocity too, how much fragmentation or how much did it shatter that bone? And now you think about it, if that bone shattered into 10 or 20 fragments, how many penetrating objects do we have now? 1 or 21? Because of those 10 bone fragments now, again, are projectiles in that body.
Okay. Bullet breaks apart too.
The bullet itself can come apart. Is it a hollow point? Is it some bullets that are just meant to, once they hit tissue, they're going to fragment into multiple pieces? Was it a shotgun blast? Whether it be buckshot or birdshot. Birdshot's hundreds of little BBs, a buckshot may be 3 big slugs. Okay, so you want to think about too is, if you know or can ascertain what type of weapon was it, or what type of bullet, what was the caliber? Okay, shot in the leg by a 25 caliber pistol versus a .223 rifle, big difference. Okay.
Was it subsonic again?
One thing too, and I can't remember if it comes up later in the slide, is when you're looking at gunshot wounds and you're documenting, we talked a lot about documentation, very important. Okay, if you have a gunshot wound, which you're assuming that this wound was caused by a gun, okay, single wound found to the anterior thigh, second wound found to the posterior thigh, third wound found to the lateral calf. Don't say entrance wound found to the anterior thigh, exit wound found to the posterior thigh, because again, you're not a forensics expert. Okay, most of the time your exit wound is going to be bigger than your entrance. Okay, but you do not need to go in there and put in your legal paperwork that that's an entrance wound.
Oh.
It is a gunshot wound. And here's another gunshot wound. And here's another gunshot wound. And here's another gunshot wound. Were they 2 gunshots that went entrance and exit? Were they 4 gunshot wounds with no exit wounds? You don't know. Okay, so don't put in your legal document in there that, again, you're not a forensic expert, you're not a CSI examiner. Okay, just put gunshot wound found to the thigh.
It's fair, because you could get a round that goes in about some size, breaks apart, and a small enough piece comes back out, and it looks just about the same size. as the
22 calibers will go in and tumble.
Yeah.
They may go in here and come out here.
5.56.
That, you know, again, so just keep that in the back of your mind when you're treating gunshot wounds, and you're not so much treatment, because you're going to treat them all the same. Every wound is a wound, and you're going to stop the bleeding. Okay, but as you document, don't label gunshot wounds as entrance and exit wounds. Okay, if you ever remember anything, 10 years down the road, I run into you. I want you to remember. I want you to be able to tell me you have never labeled an exit wound.
GSW number.
Yep, one GSW found here, two GSW, three GSW, okay? And I still see it all the time, I see people label them as entrance wounds and exit wounds. Okay.
I don't know if you guys remember the movie back in, I might be showing my age here, but Three Kings. It was they had
Lawrence
a
Fishburne,
really cool scene where they actually show a bullet going through someone and actually creating the cavitation, going through multiple organs, and it was just a really neat scene. They actually showed it during our training. It's like, hey, they made a really good example. Here you go.
Yeah. So just keep that in mind, that, and that's where, when we're talking about velocity, it is more important in an injury pattern, especially in those high velocity wounds, okay? That cavity, you'll see, you can look at on YouTube videos and all kinds of things about when you look at them shooting into like jello molds, or, they're looking at the blood. You see them all the time on these, CSI and NCIS or whatever, when they're shooting into those patterns, you see that cavity it creates, okay? Penetrating injuries of low velocity, usually knives or similar objects, knives, screwdrivers, ice picks, whatever they can find. Those are considered as low velocity. A lot of times with knife injuries, you're not only going to have the penetrating injuries, but a lot of slash injuries. Someone may have defensive wounds from trying to fight off an attacker with a knife. So not only may you have penetrating trauma, but you can have lacerations to the hands, arms, things like that. The length of the object, you want to keep that in mind. If you can see it, was it a kitchen steak knife, or was it the butcher knife? Okay. Is it a clean edge, or was it a serrated edge? Things like that. So the length of the object and the pattern of the object are important to the injury pattern too. Okay. So keep that in mind. If you can see it, if you can get an idea. Okay, the patient was stabbed in the left anterior chest with a 3-inch pocket knife versus, a butcher knife. Big difference. Okay. Medium or high velocity injuries is pellets or BB guns. Shotguns and handguns are generally medium velocity. Okay. Then your high velocity weapons are going to be your hunting rifles, your assault type rifles, okay, things like that. Medium high velocity injuries, the damage is determined by the trajectory, okay, and that's if you've got, depending on the impact, depending on the angle, you may have an entrance through and through. It looks pretty clean cut. There was one, going back to the beginning of this, the Hunter injury. It has an entrance exit wound through and through the thigh. You got an entrance wound here, you got an exit wound here, you can pretty much guess the trajectory. But like I said earlier, that 22 caliber rifle, or even a 22 caliber pistol, if someone's messing around with it, shoots themselves here, and it exits, next to his ankle because of the way it tumbled through, or hit a bone and came out under his left armpit or something like that. Okay, think of the trajectory of the projectile. Where was that energy dissipated through? Right. Dissipation of energy is affected by the drag of the projectile, the profile. Is it slender? Is it a hollow point? Is it a full metal jacket? All right. What kind of cavity, or the extent of cavitation that it caused? And we already talked about that. The bullets that may fragment. Okay. Small caliber guns are not, what I'm trying to get at is, don't think, because it was small caliber, it's not a significant injury. Okay. I saw a guy pulling, he pulled a little 25 caliber pistol. You ever seen a 25 caliber pistol? It's about that big. The projectile's a tiny little thing. Okay. So you think it's not a very significant pistol. He pulled it out of the back of his waistband, and as he pulled it out of the back of his waistband, it went off. And it struck him right here.
Hit the artery.
Right in the back of his knee. I was working in Phoenix City at the time. Our station was at the old Phoenix Regional Hospital, which is long before any of you guys were here. And fire station number 1 on Crawford Road, if you know where it's at, the old Phoenix Regional Hospital was 2 blocks away. It took us probably less than 90 seconds from the time we were dispatched to the time we were on the scene. Phoenix City Fire was on the scene because it happened in a trailer park right behind the fire station. They heard the gunshot. When they got there, this guy was already laying in a pool of blood, 8 feet around, with chest compressions in place. because that one little single bullet hit right in the back of the popliteal artery, and it traveled down his leg and completely destroyed his popliteal artery. He bled out in less than 2 minutes. Okay, so again, think about the pattern, think about the path of that bullet and what may have been involved there. Okay. Penetrating gunshot wounds, 90% are fatal wounds if they involve the head, chest, or abdomen. Okay. Most of them are fatal. If they're not fatal, there are significant injuries or significant challenges to manage that injury, especially head wounds. Talk about airway concerns, keeping an open airway, ventilating that patient. If they have significant facial trauma from that gunshot wound, you know, the guy who sticks a gun in his mouth like this, or the guy who sticks a gun under his chin, now can you properly put a bag valve mask on and get a good seal when their entire jaw is blown to pieces? No, it's a challenge, okay? Or a shotgun blast to the face where all the anatomy of the face is distorted. Can we put a good seal on and ventilate the patient? No. Is it a challenge for the paramedics to get there and try to intubate the patient with all that anatomical deformity? Absolutely. Okay, so those are tough. Chest and abdomen wounds, and we'll talk a little bit more as we go into those into chest trauma as far as how to manage those. Okay, but 90% of those wounds are going to be fatal. Wounds also occur to the neck and the extremities. Again, they're more isolated, easily managed. Real quick, we'll go through blast injuries. In a blast, a lot of different things happen. There's a lot of injury patterns. There's a lot of stages of the blast that take place. All right, each phase can cause specific types of injuries. Think about a large explosion.
Pressure.
All right, talk about the pressures of the releases of gas and energy. All right. So you think about it, that first top left there, the pressure wave itself slams into the patient, okay, causing the patient to be pushed away, all right, and that pressure wave injury. The blast wave, the second injury, now fragment, or it says superheated gases from the explosion now are going to strike the body. Okay, those cause injury striking the patient. Now the patient himself becomes part of that blast. He's a projectile now. So as that patient is thrown, you have the tertiary or third line of injury. Now as he's thrown to the ground, objects striking him as well as him striking the ground causes further injuries. And then in that last phase, the patient may also be exposed to harmful chemicals or toxins that may have been released in the explosion itself. Okay, and think about that. Every time that body is tumbled or thrown, there's another impact. There's another phase of that blast injury. Okay. All right, I think we're almost at the end of this one here. Case study. Let's go back to Nina and Scotty. They ensured that the patient has that open airway because they didn't get sidetracked by the bleeding because officer's already holding it. And he's breathing adequately. They apply oxygen by non-rebreather as the police officer continues to apply direct pressure. Nina detects a weak, thready radial pulse that she estimates to be greater than 100%. Okay? That weak, thready pulse, they don't say if it's in the injured extremity or not. So, again, if you have a gunshot wound to the left thigh, do you want to check pulses in that left foot? Yeah, I do. I want to know if, do we have pulses? Okay. If we have them, great. We know at least that vascularly he's intact still. If we have no pulses, we may think there was some trauma to the artery in there. Okay. But also too, in the uninjured extremity, if we look at it, if it would have said here that, she detects a weak thready pulse in the uninjured extremity, okay, so that weak thready pulse is not related to the injury itself, but it's related to what the body's doing. Your body's clamping down peripherally trying to keep the blood to the vital organs, so that's why we're getting that weak thready pulse. I'll always tell you guys, as you're doing trauma assessments, when you check a pulse in your ABCs, you check that carotid pulse real quick, it's a great idea when you do that, feel the radial pulse at the same time. Because now we're doing two things. We're feeling capillary, is capillary refill, is he cool, clammy, I'm feeling two parts of their body. But now I'm also doing two. I got a real strong carotid pulse, but I have a weak thready pulse. What's that telling me? Shunting. It's weak and thready distally. But now if I do them both and they're both equal and strong, okay, we're good. We got a little bit of time here. He's perfusing his body well.
okay? So think about that, and like I said, on this one here, where it says she detects a weak threatening pulse, I'd like to know, is it in that injured leg?
Didn't they describe like an arterial bleed in the initial part of this?
They didn't say anything, they just said it was significant bleeding, or moderate bleeding. She performs a rapid secondary assessment during which she finds an entry wound to the front of the thigh and an exit wound posterior. Again, I hate entry and exits, but again, a single hunter, you got 2 wounds, 1 gunshot went off, you can pretty much figure one's an entry and one's an exit, but, okay. We do have a through and through injury of the thigh. Scotty's preparing along the backboard so they can prepare the patient for transport. Okay. What factors should the EMTs consider in determining where the patient should be transported?
Nearest trauma medical center.
Okay. Is there a trauma center nearby? Does he need to go to the local community hospital? Okay.
Why didn't they use an attorney?
Well, if bleeding can be controlled with just direct pressure, a tourniquet may not be needed, and we'll talk about that more in the other chapter as far as bleeding control. Okay. But yeah, think about where does he need to be transported to. Again, if you pick him up in, a rural county USA, and a rural county community hospital that's just 10 miles up the road, versus a trauma center which might be 50 miles away, does he need to go to a trauma center? Does he need to go to a community hospital?
Can the community hospital stabilize him before you take him?
Well, they can, to a point, but again, if this guy, because of his altered mental status, significant blood loss, he does need a trauma center. So this is where you're gonna have to be put in that situation to think about. He's not life-threatening at this point, okay? So taking him to that local community hospital, to that little 6-bed ER, and now once he's received at that local hospital, now that local hospital has to try to find him a trauma center that can accept him and will accept him.
Wouldn't you have like called, made sure like if possible you had ALS on the way, so you did the delivery at that community hospital for them to begin, and then ALS would take them to the next step?
Well, once that patient goes into that community hospital, he belongs to that community hospital. And it may be hours, an hour to multiple hours, until they find a trauma center that can and will take him.
So they won't hand off to ALS.
They don't know. Once that patient goes into that hospital, when that ALS ambulance gets there, the doctor doesn't say, okay, here, take him. He has to get a receiving facility. He has to do full, everything within their capabilities to stabilize that patient. It may be minimal, it may be not, it could be hours. And, that's where you're gonna have to, and we'll talk about this a little bit here, in a little bit about the trauma centers, is you think about, if you can't drive them, is air transport a consideration? Okay. Every October happens all the time. Deer hunt season, hunting season, we get put on standby so many times for hunting accidents. Because when they get there, and a lot of the time it is remember the beginning of this, he was found in a remote location, okay, because, he rode his ATV 5 miles into the woods to find his favorite deer hunting spot. Okay, well now you gotta get your ambulance 5 miles into the woods to get him. Okay, a lot of times you and your partner are put on the back of other ATVs with your jump bag and your backboard, and you go to the patient. Your truck ain't even there. Many, many times we've landed at the scene next to the tree stand, and there's not even an ambulance there. So again, you've got to look at the logistics of, the community hospital's only 10 miles away, but it's going to take us 45 minutes to get them out of the woods into that hospital, and then they got to transfer them somewhere else where you can consider bringing in other assets.
Especially if there's not like a good clearing. What do they bring you in with, like flares that give you grid reference, or what?
Latitude and longitude.
That's so grid, okay.
All right, let's take a quick break before we go into the multi-system, the trauma system itself. Take a stretch. I gotta run to the coffee drop-off zone.
What time we coming back?
Just take about 10 minutes so we can get done with this. Want to at least get this first chapter done before you get out of here. It's all about you now.
Sorry, we're not eating your donuts.
Yeah, that's why I brought the donuts.
I know, sorry.
Animals.
I'm trying to do better.
not hear anything back, and they're like, uh-oh. And then you walked in right as I texted you, because they're like, well, can you ask again? And I was like, yeah.
That was awful.
I mean, is it any better, or?
No, I still feel completely terrible. I don't know. I didn't die though, so that's pretty good.
Yeah, you're here.
I was sitting there, my first thought was, it does suck because your brain's immediate response is, damn, we need to go to sleep. And then
Yeah.
everything's telling you, if we do that, we'll die.
Yeah.
Because that's what, immediately after it happened, I was laying there and it's raining and I'm freezing because I'm fucking covered in water laying in the ground, right? And my brain was like, damn, let's go to sleep. Oh, that was awful because I did not want to move. My brain was like, you know what? We're dead. That's it. This is
Anybody
it.
around you?
Yeah, that's the only reason I was able to get up because they were yelling and I was like, what the fuck's happening? Because right when I hit the ground, all hearing, everything was gone. I lost all senses other than actually just all of them. That was it. I was like, that's it. I'm dead.
Yesterday was crappy weather. That was the worst time to do that. Cold and wet.
And I was like, I realize now that that's the first time I've ever really noticed adrenaline kicking in because nothing hurt until I got in the house, and then my brain was like, you know what? Let's turn the adrenaline off. And it was like, fuck! Everything wanted to hurt at the same time. It was like, yes. Oh.
Man. Tempted to go get a candy bar. Even though I'm really not. Just so. Got an hour
Why
of
did you go
sleep.
to leave the door to walk in? Where are you going?
I'm hungry. I don't want that. I don't even know what that is.
So what happened to you, Bradley? What was the concussion threat? Take a fall or have an injury? Or?
Yeah, it was when it was raining, and I was trying to get to the porch, and someone had pulled through the yard, so there was no grass there, it was mud. So then when I went to go down there, I had slid, right? And it wasn't like, the normal, you'd slide and fall down. It was both feet up, head hit the ground as fast as possible kind of thing. And I was out for like 2 minutes there. That was great because it was raining, and when I woke up, I was like, well, that was fun.
Was anybody there? Anybody see you?
Yeah, they were yelling or something, but I lost basically any ability to understand what was happening around me, and my hearing was just dead. That was it. My brain was like, no.
When did it happen?
Yesterday. Now everything hurts.
Did you go get looked at all?
No. I mean, I waited that period where it's like the 3 to 6 hours where anything major would happen, and then after that, I just went to sleep.
Yeah.
So.
All right, well, we'll keep an eye on you. If you fall off on us, we'll know what to look for.
It's still crazy, the whole thing about how your body's immediate reaction is, man, we should go to sleep right after that
Yeah,
happens. And it's
fine.
like, are you serious?
Yeah. As I head to your patients, I always say, all right, I'm going to keep you awake the whole way. I'm going to
butt head and keep you away, because that's just the kind of guy I am, but.
Brain's immediate reaction, we should take a nap, and it's like, what?
The rest will make you feel better. It won't make the people taking care of you feel better, that's for sure. All right, Brett, well, I got you in here. I've got you in reviewing your records, no flu shot.
I got one with the thing I turned in with when I got the
physical form?
what was it called? Yeah, that and the TB test or whatever. I had that done during that time.
Okay, I'll look back through again. It didn't jump out at me, so it may have been a little more discreet somewhere. Your background check and drug screen, you did everything for it?
Yeah.
Okay, yours is one of the names I sent off to get the results back because I didn't have the handout.
She said she needed to get the exact date because they couldn't find the thing for me, and then I gave her the date, and I don't know what happened after that. Cause
Do you have the actual drug screen chain of custody?
they didn't
form?
give me anything back.
They did? Okay. I know in some of the files, some people had them, so if that's in there, I can look, because I know we had one student before that when I gave them the date, they found it right away. So I should get your blood check, your background check, and your drug screen back. I didn't see any shot records.
I turned that in with her.
Okay.
I don't know what happened after that.
I'll look back again, but I don't remember anything. Again, she may have something somewhere else that I didn't get. Yeah, I'll see if she's got shot records somewhere else, because they weren't in the file box that I got.
I was gonna say something really bad, but I was like, what?
Something
So, no, not like that. You're a bully, leave me alone.
We know it, she's the mean one in class.
Abigail, can I get you here a second? I need a signature from you on one form. On your, I just need a signature there.
Whoa.
Consent.
What?
You didn't have that when you left.
Information.
Yeah,
Just I just needed.
I had the combo.
This one?
You did today.
Now you just have the color.
Yeah, just shave it out, let this grow out, and then do the sides. I'll come in with chops in a couple weeks.
I'd like
I
to
think
get-
I have it in my car, honestly, if you don't mind, I
It's-
could bring
Over
it.
the semester, I'll have that handlebar with the oiled lace.
When we were studying before I shaved my mustache, I was able to actually, like by the end of it, before I shaved all this, I did this move right here.
It's
And
kinda
then
fun.
when I was at the gym, I'd take off my mask and everything, so it'd just be goatee
All right,
to a
I won't
point,
take it personally.
mustache,
Move away.
two curls.
Yeah, no, we
And
can
just like
start those
taking
on
on too much.
anyway, so.
Like I'd be sitting there
Yeah.
working out, and when it starts getting dull, I'm like, oh no.
Exactly.
All right, moving right along. There's only a few slides left in this chapter, so we can actually be able to get started in the second one. Get you a little bit before you leave us. Multi-system trauma patient. Like we said earlier in the beginning there, multiple systems involved is gonna just, common sense, more severity of injuries, more severity of the patient's criticality. Okay, you have an isolated head trauma versus head, chest, and extremity trauma. Those are all compounded. Okay, mortality morbidity is much higher in a multi-system trauma patient. Right? You want to manage your immediate life threats and transport them immediately. Okay, that's the patient you want to identify quickly as a load and go patient, and actually make them load and go away en route to an appropriate facility, and that's where the trauma system comes into play. Okay, taking that patient to an appropriate trauma facility. As we go through the rest of this semester, and we're doing, like I said, I want you guys to have so much time doing patient assessments, whether they be medical and or trauma patients. I want you to remember the term load and go, load and go, load and go. That's when you identify that patient as a life threat, okay? And you say to that evaluator, this is a load and go patient. You want to identify the patient as a load and go within the first minute or two of your assessment. The next
8 or 9 minutes of your assessment should be physically getting that patient loaded either onto a backboard or a stretcher or wherever it needs to be, so you can get them en route to the facility, okay? And we'll talk about that, we'll talk about the platinum 10 minutes and the golden period, okay? Remember, your multi-system trauma patients are gonna be much more severe than an isolated, system, all right? Loading multi-system trauma patient in the rear of a helicopter, that happens to be one of our Air Methods helicopters, the LifeNet of New York. But when you see that red, white, and blue, paint scheme, that's Air Method, just the corporation I work for. You won't see in this area too many, rear loading helicopters like that. Air evac is all 206 and 407, they're side loading from the left side. Most of your A-stars you'll see are side loading from the left side.
Or like that poor old grandma bottom load.
We fly an EC-130, which is side loading from the right side, but the majority of them that you'll see in this area are all gonna be side loading.
You guys still keep the procedures the same, if we're on standby until their crew reaches us, and then we move together just to assist.
We'll always come to your crew, and
Yeah.
we'll ideally always see the patient in the back of the ambulance. I've had, again, my favorite county, Talbot, we landed on a bridge, and as I'm getting out, my partner and I are getting out of the aircraft, they're carrying this, they're rolling the stretcher across the bridge towards us. I'm like, whoa, hold on, guys, and he was beat up pretty good. So now, how do we do a good assessment under the rotors on a patient who's still got half clothes on, half clothes off, still needs to be assessed? And he didn't look too bad off that we were able to stop outside, get him onto our monitors, do some type of assessment, and get a little bit of a verbal report, and then go. But I've had it happen where they come to you like that, you meet them, and this guy has a GCS of 8 or 6, and needs to be intubated. I'm not doing it on the side of the road, we're gonna get back in the back of the ambulance, you know? And that's where it comes in handy too, when you look at that patient and he's still fully dressed, but he was a severe, you know, auto collision. What do I wanna do? You're gonna see different levels of competency in the field, or different levels of, I give a dams in the field. And, you know, you get back there and then you expose his legs, you say, oh yeah, well, he's got an open femur that you didn't see. You know, so again, a flight crew is always gonna wanna come to your ambulance and get in there where it's a little more controlled environment. We can talk, we can look at the patient, we can interact with the patient.
And you're keeping the patient in a temperature controlled area.
Somewhat controlled,
Rather
exactly.
than bleeding out
If,
underneath the rotor.
you know, if this patient had to be intubated on the side of the roadway, do I wanna do it on the side of the roadway? No. I've done it a couple of times, it's not fun. A couple of years ago, we had that Snowmageddon, and Atlanta shut down. Our aircraft was out of service for 3 days because the hangar doors were frozen shut. The day that we were able to open the hangar doors, well, I happened to be on duty, those 3 days were my 3 days off, which sucked. But the first day I came back and we were able to open the hangar doors, we took off as soon as we went back into service. And the first call was just outside of Atlanta, in the perimeter, inside of 285. No ambulances could get to the patient. There's a severe motor vehicle crash, guy went down an embankment. When we landed there, they were just taking him up out of the dish. He was a GCS of about 8, combative, massive airway facial trauma. So we're like, hey, let's put him in the back of the ambulance. They're like, you're not gonna get an ambulance here for at least an hour. So we had to sit on the side of the road next to a ladder truck, and 8 firemen and a couple paramedics trying to intubate this guy on the side of the road. So again, ideally, the flight crew is gonna wanna come and get in the back of the ambulance. Okay. But, got off track there. Multi-system trauma patients need to go to an appropriate facility, all right? Best chances of survival are gonna occur at a trauma center. Level 2 or above, level 2 or level 1 is where you wanna take a severe trauma patient, all right? The goal for EMS providers is to limit that scene time to 10 minutes for severely injured patient. We talk about the golden, used to be the golden hour, okay? Well, now they call it the golden period, because again, some patients can tolerate a little bit longer, based on their injuries than an hour. Some need more rapid intervention than within the hour, but that golden period is getting that patient, dependent on their injuries, to the appropriate facility within that golden period. The 10 minutes that's your scene time. Whether it be by ground or by air, your time with that patient on that scene should be limited to 10 minutes, okay? If If it's a severe critical trauma patient, your time, you know, where I said, remember the term load and go? You'll also hear the term sometimes called stay and play. We're not gonna stay and play on that scene. You load and go, and you gotta be en route. When we land at the scene of an accident, our goal is to be skids down and skids off within 10 minutes. Okay? That's that platinum period right there. Within that 10-minute scene time, you must assess that patient, manage any immediate life threats, and then get them ready for transport, whether it be transporting your ground unit or getting them ready to go to a transfer to an air service. Now, you may be on the ground in your truck waiting for 15 minutes for that aircraft, okay? But you're gonna have a little bit more time then to manage, again, those immediate life threats. You may have a little bit of time for additional things like starting IVs, splitting fractures, and things like that. But you know that ultimately that patient's gonna go to a trauma facility. Again, taking them and dumping them at your local community hospital may not be in the best interest of that patient. You'll find in a lot of rural EMS agencies that they will transport everybody to that local hospital. Because one, they're getting that truck back in service. Two, they're getting that patient out of their hair. And three, which is the number one, they're building that patient for that transport. Okay? Now it's that sending facility, that local community hospital's problem on when and where they can get rid of that patient. Okay. Other things too to think about too, as far as getting that patient to the trauma center. You know they gotta go to the trauma center. You call for an aircraft. The weather may be like it was yesterday, and guess who ain't coming? That aircraft is not coming. So you're gonna have to ground to that trauma center. Okay, if the patient can tolerate a 40-minute ground trip to the trauma center, it's better to take them 40 minutes to the trauma center than it is 15 minutes to a local community hospital that can't handle their injuries. Okay, so a lot of things to keep in mind on the trauma system and getting that patient into the proper facility to meet their needs. Okay. Indications for on-scene time of 10 minutes or less and rapid transport. Okay, these are things to think about when you look at that patient to identify them as that load and go. Do they have any type of airway occlusion? Is there any difficulty managing that patient's airway? Okay, are they bleeding profusely into the airway? Do they have significant trauma there where you can't ventilate or oxygenate that patient? Respiratory rate less than 10 or greater than 29 per minute. Okay, that indicates some significant chest trauma or even some neuro trauma that's causing that respiratory rate to be either depressed or accelerated. Do they have an inadequate tidal volume? Are they moving air sufficiently? If you're sitting there going, how long am I gonna last like that? I do it for 2 more minutes, I'm gonna be on the floor probably, okay? So that patient does not have an adequate tidal volume. They're not moving air the way they need to be, all right? Are they hypoxia or showing signs of hypoxia? What's the first sign you're gonna see of hypoxia?
The pale, cool, cleansed skin and the...
Not necessarily. You're usually gonna get a patient anxiety, fear, restlessness, anxiety. That patient, when you start getting hypoxic, you're gonna get very anxious. You're gonna have those combative patients. Okay. You know, those very restless and agitated patients. I can't breathe, you know, they're gonna get like that. The pale is gonna be a little bit slower as their body starts to shunt and close down, but you know, you can get hypoxia from a head injury and there's no real, there's no hypovolemia, there's no tachycardia. It's a neuro issue that's causing them to be hypoxic. But as soon as they start getting hypoxic, they're gonna start getting very restless and anxious. Okay, a lot of times we'll get to the scene and they're like, oh yeah, he's combative. Well, yeah, he's combative because he's hypoxic. Okay. Is there any respiratory distress, any respiratory failure, or the patient in respiratory arrest? Those are load and goes, automatic. Okay, you need to get them to scene time less than 10 minutes or more. Suspected skull fracture. As you're assessing the skull, you've noticed deformities, crepitus, any bleeding, any depression, anything like that, any deformity to the shape of the skull is indication to load and go. Right. Flail chest, we already talked about that. 2 or more ribs broken in 2 or more places. If you look at the chest rise, as I inhale, my chest should expand, right? But as I do that, this flail segment goes down. And as I exhale, chest should fall. Now that flail segment comes up. That's asymmetrical chest, it's paradoxical movement. This piece that's broken that has that flail is moving in contrary to what the rest of the chest should be doing. As you take a deep breath, exhale. You should be having equal movement. If you have that flail, it's moving opposite of what it should be doing. Any suspected pneumo, hemo, or tension pneumothorax, okay? And we'll talk about those a lot more when we do chest trauma, okay? Pelvic fractures. Why is a pelvic fracture significant?
Because, excuse me, your femoral arteries are coming through your,
Okay,
pelvis.
femoral arteries run across in
Not to
there.
mention is also is where a lot of pooling in the blood could happen if you have a lot of damage there.
A pelvic fracture can hide a lot of blood, a lot of internal blood loss. It can hide up to 2 liters of blood in your pelvic cavity, okay? And that's not outward bleeding. So if you have a pelvic fracture that damages a a femoral artery, that patient may compensate for a little while, and he's losing a lot of blood in there, okay? So if you've got any type of instability to the pelvis, you look at those legs and you've got a leg that's rotated inward or outward, shortened or lengthened, you think about some type of damage. It may be nothing but a dislocation, but it may also be a pelvic fracture associated with it. If there's enough trauma to dislocate your femurs from your pelvic girdle, there's enough trauma to fracture the pelvis, okay? If in your assessment, you push on that pelvis or you squeeze it together, call it pelvic rock, okay? If you feel any crepitus or the patient screams in pain, don't do it again. Don't, note it, tell it to the other providers, tell it to the ER, tell it to the flight crew when they get there. But everybody shouldn't say, oh yeah, you're right. Everybody grating on that pelvis is not in his best interest, okay? But it is a load and go, okay? Because again, of that significant blood loss potential. Continue on, 2 or more proximal long bone fractures. What are proximal long bones? Okay. So humerus, femurs, okay? Femurs and humerus are proximal long bones. Radial and ulna are distal long bones. Tib, distal long bones. What do you think about? Fractures to the femurs, fractures to the humerus, okay? Proximal to the point of attachment, long bones. Okay. 2 or more, a crushed or mangled extremity needs to be transported, all right? Needs to go to trauma center. Uncontrolled external hemorrhage, suspected internal hemorrhage, again, that pelvis, that abdomen as you get there, you're looking at it, it was soft and tender initially, but now it's becoming more rigid and tender. It's starting to become discolored. There's a lot of blood collection taking place in there, okay? You can't fix that in the field. You can't fix that at the local community hospital. He's gonna need a trauma surgeon, all right? Signs or symptoms of shock, external blood loss with controlled hemorrhage. If you know that there was a lot of blood loss, okay? Significant amount of blood at the scene, based on the patient too. Even if bleeding is controlled, there was a lot of blood loss there that needs to be taken to trauma center. Glasgow Coma score of 13 or less. Are you all familiar with the Glasgow Coma score? Okay. Practice it, practice it, practice it. I still have been doing this 27 years and I still pull out my card and say,
I was about to say my little patient report
G,
needs
yeah.
tapping on the back.
Eye opening is 4, verbal is 3, motor response is a 2, so he's a 4, 7, 9.
3 separate.
Yeah, there are 3 separate categories. If you ever record a GCS of 15, you can write GCS 15. If you record a GCS score of less than 15, it needs to be broken down numerically as to how you got to 15. If I put a GCS of 14 on a patient, how does the receiving facility or on my paperwork know where was the deficit? And usually on 14s, they're 4, 4, 6. Their eye opening is spontaneous, which is the best. They're verbal, 5 is the best. 4, you take one off if they're confused. They can't remember their date of birth, they can't remember the accident, they don't know what happened. That's automatically a confusion. But now they move all extremities, they follow commands. So for motor, it's a 6, 4, 4, 6 for a score of 14. If you get anything less than that 15, always break it down by scores. I give reports to the trauma centers all the time because they're asked, what's the GCS? Well, the GCS is 12. I'm going to give it a 4, 3, 5. Okay, so they know where is the deficit. Is it neuro? Is it muscular? Or is it on eye opening? Any patient with altered mental status, again, confusion, that goes back into that GCS of less than 13. Confusion is usually always, you're gonna lose a point for that. Okay. If the patient has any seizure activity with or without a history of seizures, especially if they didn't have a history of seizures, involved in an accident, involved in a fall, any type of head trauma, and they're exhibiting seizure activity that they didn't have a history of, that's significant. Okay. Any sensory or motor deficit. I can't feel my hands, I can't wiggle my toes. Is that significant? Absolutely. Okay. Any penetrating trauma, any penetrating trauma to the head, chest, neck, anterior, posterior, any injury above the elbow or knee, again, significant injuries in those long bone areas. Amputation of an extremity proximal to the finger. Okay, a patient that loses a finger doesn't necessarily need to go to a trauma center. Okay. Now again, a trauma center is probably the best chance of if it's going to be reimplanted, or they have a hand specialist at that trauma center, or we know in Atlanta that Piedmont Hospital in Atlanta is not a trauma center, but they have one of the best hand specialists in the area. So if we have isolated hand or extremity trauma, we're taking to Piedmont in Atlanta.
You could take them to a level 3, right? I mean, do we
They're not doing-
categorize all the hospitals? We have a list, right?
Yeah, and usually your level 2s and above are actual traumas. And they grade them as level 3s and level 4s, which they really don't have a whole lot of trauma capability. It means they can do emergent, minimal stabilization, but they're gonna be transferring them up to a level 2 or 1. But any amputation proximal to the finger, so if you lose a hand, you know, at the wrist, above, anything like that, that is a load and go. Amputations are interesting. We were called to the scene of an amputation. En route there, they said it was an amputation of the arm. That's all we were told. So to consider MOI, my first call to the unit on the ground by radio was, what's the mechanism of injury? Actually, it was to our dispatch. I said, what's the mechanism of injury? They said it was self-inflicted. Because think about amputation. Is it a motor vehicle collision? Is it a lawnmower accident? Is it an industrial machine? Is it a chainsaw? You know, what causes, so I can start thinking, what kind of MOI am I considering? Okay, you don't really expect to hear self-inflicted. What is that MOI? That's a psychiatric history. And it was a psychiatric. This 20-some-year-old kid took a meat cleaver and chopped his arm off at the elbow. And it was clean cut, gone. So again, you're thinking MOI, safety, scene safety. Is there a car? Is there a industrial accident? You're concerned. Now my concern is this crazy son of a gun who's got this 1,000-yard stare looking through me, and as we're trying to talk to him and ask him what's going on, and we're here to help him, he's like, nope, Jesus gonna help me, Jesus gonna help me, Jesus gonna help me, Jesus gonna help me. That's all he was saying. I was like, you know what?
Until that patient passed out.
10 milligrams of Versed is gonna help you right now. So, amputations can be significant. Okay. Believe me, the receiving hospital thought the same thing when we said he chopped his arm off with a meat cleaver. We had pictures. We had pictures.
Yeah, that's a
We had
picture.
pictures. I can't find those pictures
I've got a
anymore. Those were
scrapbook.
great. All right, trauma patient with significant medical history. Again, the trauma may not seem significant, the MOI may not have seemed significant, but based on the patient's medical history and underlying conditions, those are called comorbidities. Okay, the patient who has history of an MI, COPD, congestive heart failure, he's elderly, greater than 55, any history of hypothermia, burns, or pregnancy, those are all comorbidities that can make that trauma more significant. Okay, so keep that in mind. If the patient doesn't look bad, but because of their underlying condition, underlying history may make it. All multi-system trauma patients, open or depressed skulls, suspected brain injury. What are some signs that are going to give you that you would suspect a possible brain injury?
Altered mental status, battle wound, well, raccoon eyes,
Battle
whatever you guys
signs,
call it.
raccoon eyes.
Yeah.
Raccoon eyes.
Where you're gonna get discoloration around the eyes, that's from bleeding in the skull. Battle sign, bruising behind the ears.
Yeah.
Okay, that takes a little bit of time, a couple of
Fairly
hours
quick
to
on that
develop.
develop,
It's
yeah.
not gonna happen instantly, but within a couple of hours, they'll start to develop. So again, if you respond to that fall, or, oh yeah, he was in a car crash earlier this morning and he didn't go to the hospital, and now he's home laying on a couch with rattle signs or raccoon eyes, and he's confused and hard to arouse, that's a significant head injury. That's a sign of brain injury, okay? If you find half the brain laying outside of his skull, that's a significant brain injury, okay?
That's not suspected, that's
I was
confirmed.
about to say, that's bag and tag, we don't touch coroner gets
And
that one.
believe me, I've seen plenty of them that they're still awake and barely talking to you, and it's like, buddy, you should be dead, I just haven't told you yet. And any paralysis, again, goes back to the motor or sensory deficits and extremities, all right? Trauma systems, their goal is to provide immediate surgical intervention, okay? Surgery is required. A trauma surgeon is needed to go in here and intervene on these patients. That local community hospital, that ER doc might be able to, pop a chest tube in place, but he can't go in there and crack the chest and stop the bleeding, okay? So that's the difference is when you take them to these local community hospitals, they don't have the surgical interventions that can go in there. They may have a general surgeon at the hospital and it's the weekend and he's, it'll take us an hour or two for him to come in because them not being a designated level 2 or above trauma center, they don't even have to have one on call. So they may or may not have one be available, okay? I've gone to local community hospitals where we've taken the patient out of the operating room, off the OR table, because the general surgeon that came in on the weekend thought, oh, yeah, I'll go in and crack his chest and see what it looks like. And we take him off of the OR table with trauma dressings packed in his abdomen, and they close him up, and we take him that way. So again, going to the local community hospital can be a detriment to that patient. Different levels of trauma center we'll talk about in a minute. Care dramatically reduces the morbidity and mortality of those patients. Okay, getting them into the appropriate facility. Again, if it takes you 20 or 30 minutes longer to get them to the trauma center, it may be well worth the risk because again, that local community probably won't be able to take care of them. They may try, but again, too, especially today, in today's times, you can't find a bed available.
Yeah.
Local community hospital, let's say, Upson Regional Hospital in Upson County. Trauma patient gets rolled in there either by private auto or the local ground EMS takes them there. And now they have to take them, well, they got a trauma center in Macon, they got 2 trauma centers in Atlanta, and they got a trauma center in Columbus. And they're gonna call every single one of those 4. And they may or may not have a bed available. My wife works the ICU in Midtown here. She knows that for the last week, she has had no ICU beds available. She manages 6 and 8 ICU patients in the ER because they have nowhere to go. Do you think if Upson Regional calls Midtown and says, hey, I got a trauma patient I need to bring you, can you take it? What's their answer gonna be?
Nah, bro.
Can't.
I heard some places.
We got called the other day from Upson Regional to transfer the patient to Savannah Memorial because that's the only place that a trauma bed was available for that patient.
How far was that flight?
Huh?
How long?
From our base to there is about 2 hours flight. Okay, so again, because of you being a pre-hospital ground ambulance, you coming to that trauma center directly takes that whole piece of the pie out of the equation. But once they get into a facility where that facility can manage them or not, they're in a facility they don't have to be accepted anywhere else. And that patient can die sitting there waiting for acceptance somewhere else. You take them to a trauma center, even a trauma center that's on diversion, unless those doors are physically locked because of a disaster, you can take the patient there. I've had even hospitals on medical diversion. I've taken stroke patients there because I'm a pre-hospital ambulance. If I pick them up from the scene of an accident from you, I am a pre-hospital ambulance. And as a pre-hospital patient, that they don't have to have acceptance to be received at the hospital. I'm going to show up at the ER just like you do. Just my landing spots up top and I'm coming through the back door. Okay? So keep that in mind when you're ever thinking about having to take a patient to the local hospital versus getting them right into the trauma system. Okay? Picture St. Louis Fire. Great. Trauma system. Level 1, 2, 3, and 4. Again, I don't even consider level 3s and 4s being trauma centers. Okay, they call them community trauma center and a trauma facility is level 3s and 4s. We'll talk about it a little bit here and what their capabilities are. Level 1 has, let's see if it doesn't say it here.
24 hours a day.
Yeah,
7 days a week.
level 1 has all services available 24 hours a day, in-house, 7 days a week. Level 2 has the majority of services in-house, 24/7, and those services that are not are on call within 20 to 30 minutes. Most of your level 1 trauma centers are teaching facilities, Grady's, Atlanta Medical Center, Macon, Navison. Columbus is a teaching hospital to a point, they have residents in there. But again, Columbus is a level 2 trauma center. Navison, Macon's a level 1. Grady and Atlanta Medical Center in Atlanta are level 1s. Okay, you've got some outlying level 2s around Atlanta. Okay, but in this area, your trauma center is Midtown. Right? And that's about the only difference between level 1s and 2s as far as the 24/7, all specialties in-house all the time. Medical center, or still called the medical center, Midtown, has some of those specialties on call, but they're within, there is someone designated on call within a 20 to 30 minute response time. So again, you bringing that hunter in from Talbot County with a gunshot wound, guess what? You've got time to call that receiving facility and say, I'm bringing you a significant gunshot wound, bleeding, loss of blood, altered mental status, because now they can activate that cardiovascular surgeon. And he can be waiting for you when you arrive or be there shortly after your arrival. Okay, so that goes back to the importance of giving that radio report as early as possible, so they can activate trauma on calls if need be. This is a card, I used to have some of these cards, I'll see if I can find them. Guidelines for field triage of the injured patient. Basically all those slides we just went over about 2 proximal long bone fractures, chest trauma, abdominal, that's all on here, okay? And it talks about transport to appropriate level trauma centers. I mentioned the golden principle of pre-trauma care, getting that patient to the appropriate trauma center for treatment of critical injuries. Always keep in mind in managing any patients, isolated trauma, multi-system trauma, medical patient, always remember who's the most important person on that scene?
You are.
You, okay? If you become injured or incapacitated on that scene, you're not helping anybody, and now you're taking away resources to help you. So your personal safety, high priority. Always manage patient's airway. Without an airway, you don't have a patient. You can't manage and ventilate that patient. That is your #1 goal, airway management. Stop significant bleeding. We'll go into more of that in the next chapter as far as bleeding control, but stop significant bleeding any way appropriate. We'll talk about it more. Assess that trauma patient in a systematic sequence, and that's why I want you guys over and over and over. I want you guys to be sick and tired of patient assessment by the end of the semester. But I want you to feel so comfortable that you can do it. And the thing about it is a systematic approach, head to toe. Do your ABCs, your head to toe. If you ever get lost, you get confused, go back and start it over again, because when you run into problems, and I've seen it with students, I've seen it with people testing for registry, I've seen it with people practicing in the field, experienced providers. If you get flustered, you get distracted by, an angulated fracture or a moderately bleeding wound that shouldn't distract you, you forget important things because you're not following that systematic approach. Okay? Keep things in sequence. Special considerations, rapid transport is essential, whether you do it by ground, whether you do it by air. Okay? Think of your resources. When you always think about that, it says, scene size up is a scene safe, additional resources needed. Don't just say those words, think about what are those additional resources? What do we need? We need extrication tools. We need air transport. We need hazmat. We need law enforcement for scene control. Don't just get in the blurb of saying, I'm considering additional resources. What does that mean? Okay. Do we need to call Georgia Power to turn off electricity to that power line that's laying across the car? That's an additional resource. Okay. Think about what those tools are that you need. In a severely injured patient, a backboard serves to splint fractures in an unstable trauma patient. Okay, if you got a patient with, a pelvic fracture or isolated or bilateral femur fractures? Do we apply traction splints to both legs, or do we try to, no, if he's unstable, he's a critical load and go, you mobilize him to a backboard. They talk about a vacuum splint. In my years of doing this, I've never seen anybody transport a vacuum splint.
Backboards, you guys still using little cushions? Like
Huh?
Velcro cushions for the sides? Staples? No?
You can mobilize them to the board with straps, you know, you may pad or cushion some voids as necessary. But again, the book talks about backboard or vacuum splint. Very, very few. Like I said, I've never seen a service that uses a vacuum splint.
All the compression
for
stuff,
the-
yeah.
Huh?
All the compression?
Well, yeah, and then, you know, as you put the patient onto it and then you vacuum out the air, they're gonna be form-fitting around the patient.
Yeah.
But they're very difficult to maintain because all it takes is one little pinhole. And believe it or not, the equipment in these trucks is not maintained to the best. So if that thing takes one little piece of glass from a scene, that vacuum no longer works because you can't get that rigid form to it. But you're gonna see backboards all day long, and you'll have patients immobilized to that. If during your transport you have time then to go back and splint that tib-fib fracture, yeah, great, no problem, go ahead and do it because you're minimizing movement. But initially, to get them off the scene, if they're unstable, the backboard serves as a full body splint.
Would you do that during transport? Because wouldn't that require you unstrapping a portion of the patient?
It all depends on, one, where you're trying to splint. I mean, maybe splitting a forearm fracture or something, or, you know, just you have to think about what are your capabilities to get to them. Is that board stabilizing them adequately? Leave them as is. Okay? I only mention that because they do talk about, you can do that around. It's probably not your highest priority because if they were an unstable patient, guess what? They're still gonna be an unstable patient while you're transporting. And your main priority should be ABCs and up here in the life threats and not that ankle fracture. Do not develop tunnel vision and become focused on dramatic injuries or patients, okay? Dramatic and traumatic are two different things, okay? Drama queens get a lot of attention. Drama kings get a lot of attention.
Facial bleeds.
Okay, facial bleeds, again, angulated extremity trauma is one that's very dramatic, but it's not a life threat. But the patient may make the biggest deal in the world about it because, oh my God, look at my finger. You know, seeing patients focusing on a finger that's bent the wrong way. It's not gonna kill you. Okay, the knife you got in your neck is what's gonna kill you. Okay. Case study, in closing this out, Nina consults with medical direction concerning their destination of the patient. Remember, this is that thigh gunshot wound. There's a community trauma center 20 minutes away and a regional trauma center 70 minutes away. Okay, so we're considering this to be by ground. So again, 20 minutes versus going 70 minutes by ground. You know, 50 minutes is a significant. Your ambulance may not be allowed to leave the county. That's again another indicator for air transport. You may be, again, what I told you, you work in Talbot County, Upson County, some of these rural, you may be the only 911 ALS ambulance in that county. It happens in many counties. They may only have two. Again, they can all be tied up on the same scene. So, again, utilizing your resources, if a 70-minute ground trip, air transport is about 1/3 of that time. Okay, so you're talking about 20 minutes by air, 23 minutes by air versus 70 by ground. So again, consider that when you're thinking about your additional resources. Medical direction advises the transport to the community trauma center, which is a joke, where the patient will receive initial stabilization. It is likely that the patient will be transferred to the regional trauma center for definitive treatment. But again, follow your medical control. A lot of these outlying hospitals, when you call in your report, you may be on your way to that local community hospital, and they will divert you. They will say, divert to Columbus Medical Center, divert to Atlanta Medical Center, okay? Divert to a trauma center because they know they don't have capabilities to transport or to treat that patient. Okay. In summary, remember the MOI. It's just an indicator of injuries you should look for or might suspect, right? Potential injuries. Velocity is more important than mass, but the two of them determine the amount of kinetic energy. Think about your trauma, types of injuries you would find in blunt versus penetrating trauma. Okay. High velocity weapons are going to be more significant injuries, all right, more massive bodily injury involved. Trauma systems, you want to get that patient to where they can get surgical intervention. Okay, that local community hospital probably doesn't have that surgical capability. Sometimes they may try, and then once you get in and get in over your head, you're in the weeds, they got to go somewhere else. Okay. Use that trauma triage criteria. Also go based on your local protocols. Okay, your local system protocols may stay, and they're going to follow usually that CDC guideline. If the patient has that significant MOI, has these significant physiological injuries that you found when you assessed the patient, meets the criteria for a level 1 or level 2 trauma center, your protocol is to take them to a level 1 or level 2 trauma center, whether it be by ground or by air. Okay. You will find too, the question you asked is, okay, if you're on a BLS unit, you're transporting them to the local community hospital, can the ALS unit meet you there and take the patient from you? I said when the patient comes onto that hospital property, he belongs to them. That's not always true. Okay. A lot of air transport services is part of their region, the region EMS protocols, to where they can meet an EMS unit at a hospital, and they're using that hospital's helipad merely as a rendezvous point, an ambulance exchange point to pick up that patient. As long as that's in their community protocols or their region protocols, that can be done. Physically, that patient is on the hospital's property, but he doesn't belong to the hospital. Unless you as the EMS provider says, hey, I gotta take this patient into the ER. I'm gonna go into the ER because it's cold in the truck. As soon as you roll in those doors, it's game over. He belongs to the hospital. I've taken a patient by ground because we couldn't get an airway on. We didn't have a pulse on the patient. We took him by ground to the local hospital. On the way to the local hospital, we got IV established, we got a pulse back, we got our blood pressure back. And when we pulled up to the back doors, our aircraft was already going to the hospital to meet us, just to pick us up and bring us back home, because we got a dead guy. He landed there. The ER doc opened the back doors, and we said, we got it, doc, we got a pulse, we got a blood pressure. He closed the doors, because he knew if he put his hands on that patient, he was theirs. We took him from the ambulance, put him on the helicopter. Again, it was part of the protocols that's a designated rendezvous point. So if you have that in your protocols, that is a good way to get them to a trauma system, using the local community hospital just for their helipad. Okay. But again, if you're sitting there and you're waiting for a helicopter that's 15, 20 minutes away, and your patient does not have an airway, then yeah, you may need to go inside because they can do things that you can't. Okay. So again, always follow your protocols. Know what you got there. All right. This goes back to that question about what was the most significant factor for injury, and it was the velocity. Any questions? Long chapter, a lot of information. It's just pretty much giving you the overall guide of considerations in trauma. Okay. Trauma patients being motor vehicle collisions, falls, penetrating trauma, blunt trauma. Always think about what that MOI, and how it relates to things that you can anticipate injuries in your patient. Okay? And that'll be kind of your, not your golden rule, but kind of a guide to say, okay, well, you know what, if he took a baseball bat to the chest, I should be looking for injuries here. If he got hit one time with a baseball bat across the chest, this is where I'm going to focus, where I might find my injuries. Okay? So keep that in mind. I'm going to start. It's 11:45. You guys want a break for lunch? Or do you want to go a little bit?
What do we have after this?
Going into soft tissue and bleeding. It's a lengthy chapter. I want to get it finished with the. I'm going to cut you out of here. Because again, if we get started, we're only going to go a few slides into it before you've got to go. I don't want to keep them till 12:45.
Yeah.
And then break for lunch. So let's go ahead and take lunch. It's 11:45 now. You guys good with 45 minutes? Does that give you enough time?